Chapter 2075. Super Bright Light Bulb 3. As expected, the moment the two of them left the room, they saw Tsang already sitting at the stone table in the courtyard. In front of him was a plate of food, and he was gobbling it up. When he saw Lung Ruoxue, Tsang even waved at her, signaling her to come over and eat. It was as if nothing had happened yesterday. Lung Ruoxue looked at Tsang for a long time suspiciously. In the end, after confirming that Tsang really wasn't angry about yesterday's incident, she felt at ease. In reality, how could the narrow-minded Azure not be angry? However, it put this account on the demon's head, so naturally, it would not be angry at its fragrant and soft future master. After breakfast, Lung Ruoxue apologetically told Ninghai about the destruction of the room. When Ninghai heard it, he couldn't help but open his mouth and look at Tsang. Then he said with a lingering fear, "It's all right, it's not a big deal." Yes, compared to the Divine Master's residence, the claw marks in his room were nothing. Following that, Lung Ruoxue's group of four bid farewell to Ninghai's family and headed towards the Ning family's main residence. Before they could approach the Ning family's main residence, a Ning family steward, who had been waiting for them outside the door, immediately rushed in front of them when he saw the Great Elder. Then, with a nervous face, he searched the four people and one beast, and then asked with a slight disappointment, "Miss Lung didn't come? They're here." The first elder glanced at Lung Ruoxue as his mouth twitched. "May I know where it is?" The manager's face was filled with anxiety. At this moment, the grand elder with a high status and the Totoro in Lung Ruoxue's arms could no longer pique his interest. He only wanted to find Lung Ruoxue. "I'm here," Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. Hearing the voice, the manager turned towards Lung Ruoxue and suddenly realized that the person who spoke was a man. Instantly, the manager was in a state of confusion. Oh my God! What was going on? Wasn't Miss Lung a woman? But this person who called himself Miss Lung was clearly a genuine man. At the thought of this, the steward's gaze quietly shifted to Lung Ruoxue's flat chest. After confirming it once again, he could not help but turn pale with fright. Could it be that Miss Lung was not Miss Lung, but Master Lung? Seeing the manager's face changing like a color palette, Lung Ruoxue could not be bothered to explain anything to him. Instead, she asked directly, "Aren't you going to invite us in?" Please come in. Please come in." The manager was sweating profusely. How could he be so rude to Master Lung? Moreover, First Elder was also present. He was the family head's best friend. The manager welcomed Lung Ruoxue and the rest into the living room. At this moment, Second Elder and the rest who had heard the news were already waiting here. When they saw Tsang, the elders suppressed the excitement in their hearts and didn't surround him. However, their fervent gazes explained everything. All the elders were suppressing their excitement. Xiang Tsang, First Elder, and the rest greeted him one by one. When they looked at Lung Ruoxue, the elders did not know what to say. They did not know this unfamiliar man. "I'm Lung Ruoxue." Lung Ruoxue glanced at the elders and spoke calmly. All the elders were shocked. They stared at Lung Ruoxue in disbelief. At this moment, the shock that Lung Ruoxue gave them was even greater than Tsang. "Are you cross-dressing?" After sizing up Lung Ruoxue, Second Elder could not tell that this man was Lung Ruoxue. Hence, he could only ask carefully. Yes. Lung Ruoxue didn't want to explain too much to them, so she nodded. Upon hearing this, the elders' hearts finally settled down. It was still all right. That little girl had finally arrived. They had been disappointed for quite a while when they did not see Lung Ruoxue. They even thought that the manager was lying to them. Now that they had confirmed it, they were relieved. "Little girl, I'll take you to see the master." After confirming, the Second Elder said without any hesitation. "All right," he said. Lung Ruoxue nodded in agreement. Following that, the Second Elder brought Lung Ruoxue, the group of four people, and one beast to the forbidden grounds at the back of the mountain. However, when she saw the reluctant gazes of the elders before they left, Lung Ruoxue was truly speechless. She knew that those reluctant eyes were definitely not for her, but for Tsang. He didn't expect Tsang to capture the hearts of the Ning family elders so quickly. He was really amazing. However, on second thought, this world was where the strong were respected, so it was only natural for them to worship Song. Seeing how calm Song was, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh. Soon they arrived at the back mountain. After entering the forbidden area, second elder sent Lung Ruoxue and the rest to the residence of his family head. He then found an excuse to leave. He didn't want to go in and be their cannon fodder. If these people didn't agree, he would definitely be the one in trouble. With this thought in mind, the second elder ran even faster than a rabbit. When they entered the garden, they saw Master Ning sitting on a stone chair with a cup of tea in his hand. However, when he saw them, Master Ning snorted arrogantly and turned his head away, ignoring them. He also knew that Lung Ruoxue had disguised herself as a man. After all, ever since he knew that they had arrived in the Ning family's main city, his divine sense had been watching them. Seeing this, the first elder quickly stepped forward and slammed the table with a displeased expression. "You're good, old man Ning. We came to see you with good intentions, but you're giving us a hard time." "Umph. Did I ask you to come?" the master of the Ning family said unhappily. In fact, he was annoyed that the other party had come too late. "Are you saying that we shouldn't have come?" The great elder stared at the master of the Ning family and asked. Then he muttered to himself, "Ai, it looks like we really shouldn't have come. We're here to be bullied by your family's younger generation. What are we trying to achieve?" After he finished speaking, the first elder's face revealed an expression of extreme regret. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she could not help but laugh to herself. These two old men were actually acting. After hearing the great elder's words, the master of the Ning family snorted coldly and didn't have any other reaction. In fact, he was a little weak in his heart. But on second thought, he was a little annoyed. Damn it! What was he feeling guilty about? The one at fault was clearly that brat. At the thought of this, he glared at Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue felt that she was very innocent. It was clearly these two old men who were fighting, so how did she get implicated? She hadn't even started. Thinking of this, Lung Ruoxue felt wronged and said, "Godfather, do you know how dangerous our journey was? We met a few guys who claimed to be from the Ning family. They wanted to take advantage of their power to bully us and rob our things. In the end, they even wanted to silence us. It really wasn't easy for us to come here. We were so close to not being able to see Godfather anymore." "That's right. We almost lost our lives, and you're giving us attitude. You really shouldn't have. We're so sad." After First Elder heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he quickly chimed in, "Hee. This was called striking first to gain the initiative. Humph. He even dared to cause trouble in the Godlord's mansion. You even dared to destroy it, so why would you be afraid of a few ants?" When Master Ning heard this, he was furious and his eyes swept over Song. Song immediately put on a delicate appearance and said, "I'm just a bonus. It's not important." "You're not important? Among these people, you are the fiercest." Hearing Song's words, Master Ning couldn't help but think in his heart. However, he remained calm and continued, "All right. We all know that those unfilial descendants of the Ning family can't do anything to you. Moreover, I've decided to hand them over to you to deal with. It's up to you whether you want to kill them or keep them alive. So, don't confuse this matter with the fact that you've been hiding it from me. I won't be fooled." Seeing that their godfather had guessed their thoughts, Lung Ruoxue and the rest looked at each other helplessly. Then Lung Ruoxue carefully said, "Godfather, we hid this from you because we didn't want you to worry." "Humph. You shouldn't have kept it from me if you were afraid that I would be worried. You should let me go with you." The master of the Ning family was furious when this matter was brought up, and finally, he couldn't bear it anymore and roared, "You have to stay at home and help us. Besides, with Uncle Long, Uncle Ao, and that freak here, our safety is definitely guaranteed." Lung Ruoxue understood what he meant. Godfather was angry that she didn't bring him along. Therefore, she could only coax him patiently. "Humph. Why do I have to stay behind to guard the place? Can't they stay behind?" The master of the Ning family asked again. To put it bluntly, he was jealous. If those people could stay by Shui Er's side, why couldn't he? "Godfather, you're a well-known figure in the divine realm. If you go with them and are discovered by Rime Ice, the Ning family will also be in danger. Although I really want you to accompany me, I still have to think for the Ning family. You're the backbone of the Ning family, so when you're doing this kind of bad thing, you absolutely can't stand out. Lung Ruoxue laid out the truth. Don't you have the disguise pill? Just give me one. The master of the Ning family reminded angrily. There's no such thing as an impervious wall in this world. I don't dare to take the risk. When Lung Ruoxue said this, her face was full of innocence. She even used her puppy-like watery black eyes to look at Master Ning ingratiatingly. Master Ning's heart softened and his anger subsided a lot. In fact, when he first found out about this, he was really angry. He was angry that Shui-er actually dared to hide such a big thing from him. This made him feel like his precious goddaughter no longer needed him. This feeling made him very disappointed, which was why he lost his temper and left the Devil's Land in a fit of anger. Chapter 2076. We're all bosses 1. However, as soon as he left the Devil's Land and returned to the Ning family, he regretted it. He wanted to go back, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, so he could only wait for Shui-er, the stinky girl, to coax him. But who knew that after waiting for so long, the stinky girl came so late? Thinking of this, the anger in the Ning family's master's heart suddenly burst out again. You don't dare to take the risk? All right. You're quite thoughtful, but why didn't you tell me immediately when you came back? The master of the Ning family once again glared at him and roared. In other words, he was saying, you didn't tell me, and you knew I was angry, but you didn't come to coax me earlier. What are you trying to do? I was making an antidote for senior brother. I wanted to wake him up as soon as possible, and then tell you about this. Lung Ruoxue said with a slight grievance. In reality, she had also thought that this matter would most likely not be able to be kept a secret. However, she did not expect that Godfather would find out so quickly. Furthermore, she did not expect that Godfather would lose his temper and actually run away from home in a fit of anger. He had left her home. Moreover, she thought that Godfather's anger would subside after a few days. Who knew that Godfather was so proud? Will you really tell me about this? After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Master Ning squinted his eyes and asked doubtfully. Of course, and I have more important things to tell Godfather. Lung Ruoxue said with certainty. What is it? The master of the Ning family raised his brows and asked. Upon hearing this, the first elder immediately looked at Lung Ruoxue. He was very interested in the important matter she was talking about. It's not convenient to talk here. Lung Ruoxue said as she swept her gaze across the garden. Follow me. The master of the Ning family said with a serious face. He was sure that what Shui-er wanted to tell him was definitely not ordinary. With that, Master Ning brought Lung Ruoxue and the rest to his own secret room. After entering the secret room, they found their seats and sat down. Then the master of the Ning family said with a serious face. Stinky girl, if you have something important to say, just say it. This place is very safe. Then I'll say it. Godfather, you'd better be mentally prepared. Lung Ruoxue reminded him with a serious expression. Yes. The master of the Ning family nodded, but his heart was a little uneasy. He didn't know what important thing Shui-er wanted to tell him, making it so mysterious. To be honest, his heart was beating very fast at this time, as if something was going to happen. Let's start with senior brother's injury. Do Godfather and Great Elder know who our master is? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Girl, don't keep me in suspense, hurry up and tell me. The Grand Elder urged him anxiously. Yes, tell me quickly. The master of the Ning family nodded in agreement, and used his eyes to signal Lung Ruoxue to continue. Our master is the master you speak of. Lung Ruoxue looked at the two anxious old men, and said calmly. As soon as she said this, the master of the Ning family and the Great Elder were as dumbfounded as she had expected. They followed Cheng Wu and asked with a face full of question marks. Miss, was that master you the previous divine master? He vaguely remembered that he had heard Uncle Long mention it once, but he did not take it to heart at that time. Lung Ruoxue nodded and didn't say anything. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on the master of the Ning family and the first elder, observing their reactions. After Cheng Wu received the confirmation, he was extremely excited. This was too unexpected. He didn't expect his Miss Master to be the previous divine master of the divine realm. Oh. Misbacking is huge. When Chengwu thought of all this, his heart started beating wildly. However, Master Ning and First Elder were not as excited as he was. After the two of them regained their senses, they looked at Lung Ruoxue with a worried expression. After a long while, Master Ning took a deep breath and slowly said, "Girl, you can't let outsiders know about this." "Why?" Chengwu was puzzled. Wasn't this a good thing? He was still unaware of the grudges between Master Yu and the current Divine Master. He also did not know that Lung Ruoxue and Wu Ming were destined to be enemies. Because if the current Divine Master finds out that Shue'er is Master Ye's disciple, he won't let her off. The Master of the Ning family sighed and said helplessly. Although he was still young when Master Ye's accident happened, he had been a high-ranking official for so many years, so he knew a little about the secret of that year. Therefore, he really couldn't imagine what Wu Yan would do if he knew that Shue'er was Master Ye's disciple. After hearing the explanation of the Ning family head, Cheng Wu's face was filled with disbelief. How could this happen? AI. Little brat, you don't know what happened back then. Our current Divine Master used underhanded means to ascend the throne. Otherwise, how could Master Yu have died? The Great Elder also sighed. At that time, if it wasn't for their young age and their ignorant appearance, it was hard to say whether they could have lived until now. Thinking back to the past, it was really thrilling. It was as if they were walking on thin ice every day. If they made a mistake or said something wrong, they might be hunted down by the people sent by the fog ripple. That period of time could be said to be the darkest time in the hearts of many people in the immortal realm. Chengwu did not know what to say. He could only stare at Lung Ruoxue without blinking. However, he could not help but worry in his heart. If it was really like what Master Ning and First Elder had said, then the young lady would be in danger. Little girl, your senior brother's injury is related to rime ice? The Master of the Ning family asked. Yes, only the flower petal on Maline's body can heal senior brother's injuries, so I had no choice but to go to the Divine Lord's estate to get the flower petal for senior brother. Lung Ruoxue explained simply. This is too dangerous. The Master of the Ning family broke out in a cold sweat. Even if Shue'er was sitting right in front of him, he couldn't help but be afraid when he thought of the scene at that time. It's good, we've finally returned safely. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she consoled him. You're praising me too much. I got the petals back. Don't forget to take credit. And it's all thanks to Tsong. Lung Ruoxue nodded in agreement. Song. After hearing the Totoro's words and seeing Lung Ruoxue call it Song, Master Ning couldn't help but think to himself, why does this name give him a sense of déjà vu? He seemed to have heard it somewhere before. However, he could not remember. All of a sudden, he had a flash of inspiration. Then, he revealed an expression of disbelief. You are the spirit of the God-protecting tower? Correct, but no reward. Azure raised his little head and said with an evil smile. Arg. It's true. After the Master of the Ning family confirmed it, he couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. He thought to himself with lingering fear, when did the Totoro clan become so powerful? If it was the spirit of the God Protection Tower, then it was understandable. There was nothing in this world that he would not dare to do, except killing the Master God. Chapter 2077. We're both masters too? I'm sure. Azure said with some pride. At this time, the First Elder who was listening to their conversation, said in a daze, I actually hugged the spirit of the God-protecting pagoda before. It hurts. This is real. It turned out that the Great Elder thought he was dreaming, so he pinched himself hard. After feeling the severe pain, he dared to believe what he had heard. Then he looked at his hands in a daze, so excited that he couldn't speak. Although he felt that Song's name was familiar, he did not think of it that way. More importantly, the spirit of the God Protection Tower was a legendary figure in the divine world. Its fame was definitely not lower than the Divine Lord's. Moreover, everyone knew that the spirit of the God Protection Tower did not even give in to the Divine Lord. When the Master of the Ning family and the Great Elder thought of this, they couldn't help but say in unison, Thank you, Senior, for helping Shue'er. Tisk. Who needs your thanks? Nyo's my future master, it's my duty to help him. Azure said disapprovingly. Upon hearing this, the Ning clan head and grand elder were once again at a loss for words. They were so shocked that they could not speak. As for Cheng Wu, the question marks on his face increased. The spirit of the god protecting pagoda? It seemed to be very powerful. However, he knew that Song was not to be trifled with, so he did not dare to reveal his ignorance. He could only send a voice transmission to his lady in private. After hearing Lung Ruoxia's explanation, his gaze towards Song became even more heated. He was an idol. This was a true idol. Originally, he thought that Song was just very fierce. He didn't expect that his status was also so high. Moreover, they would have the opportunity to work together in the future. This was simply too blissful. Cheng Wu was so happy that his tail was about to curl up. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. Sensing Cheng Wu's excitement, Song especially jumped in front of him and patted his shoulder. Brat, from now on you're my little brother. Follow this lord and you'll have meat to eat. Would he be its little brother in the future? Cheng Wu was a little confused. He thought that he had already become one. However, it didn't matter in the future. Thinking of this, he said to Azure, Master Song, please take care of this little brother in the future. Whether this little brother can live well or drink well, it all depends on you. Oh really? So, I've been starving you all this time? Hearing Cheng Wu's words, Lung Ruoxia was unhappy. The evildoer snorted coldly. Cheng Wu, are you thinking of leaving Shuer and going to mix with that Totoro? Don't you regret it? That Totoro is very unreliable. Of course, they said that on purpose to ease the tense atmosphere. However, Cheng Wu did not know. The moment Cheng Wu heard Lung Ruoxia and the demon's conversation, he broke out in cold sweat. He shook his head like a rattledrum and quickly explained, Miss, you've misunderstood. I didn't mean it that way. You what? Lung Ruoxia glanced at Cheng Wu with a half-smile as she spoke indifferently. What I mean is, Song and I will be colleagues in the future. Since we are colleagues, of course we have to get along well. We can't let Miss worry about us. In the future, if you have any problems, just find Song for help. That was probably what I meant. Miss, please don't misunderstand. Cheng Wu said fearfully as he thought of his words and felt a lingering fear. Don't worry. Neo won't misunderstand. She's just teasing you. However, you can't look for me if you have any problems in the future. You have to deal with it yourself. As the saying goes, it's better to rely on yourself than on others. You have to find your own way to solve everything and don't rely on others for everything. Those people are parasites and will never become strong. Yu said earnestly. I know, I'm just saying. Song's words made Cheng Wu a little embarrassed. In fact, his words were mostly a joke. When he said it, he didn't expect his miss to misunderstand. Now that he heard Song say that Miss was just teasing him, he instantly felt at ease. However, he still looked at Lung Ruoxia with resentment, his eyes filled with grievance. Young Miss was really too bad, actually scaring him. When she saw Cheng Wu's pitiful expression, Lung Ruoxia could not help but laugh in her heart. With their interruption, the master of the Ning family and the great elder quickly came back to their senses, but they still couldn't hide the surprise on their faces. Then the great elder couldn't help but ask. Song, you said that Shuer is your future master. What do you mean? Don't tell me you haven't recognized me as your master yet? Of course not. Neo still can't meet my requirements, so she can't recognize me as her master yet. I'll train her later until she meets my requirements. At that time, Neo will become my true master. Azure explained with a smile. When the great elder heard this, he nodded his head and thought to himself. Azure's requirements are really high. Even a monster like Little Shui can't make it recognize a master. No wonder Azure has been without a master for so many years. Moreover, if Shui had a guardian tower spirit, then she would have the power to fight against Rhyme in the divine world. However, he didn't expect that Azure couldn't help Shui at all. After all, it was restricted by some rules. Lung Ruoxia saw that the great elder and her godfather had already been triggered by Tsong's identity. She then spoke again. There's one more thing, it's about the demon's identity. What's this kid's identity? First Elder and Master Ning looked at each other, and their hearts started to beat wildly again. Could it be that this brat Yi also had a mysterious identity? His true identity is the master of the 9 nether prison. Lung Ruoxue said straightforwardly. This time, she did not keep him in suspense. What? Mistress of the dark world. The two of them turned pale with fright, and were once again dumbfounded. This time, they felt even more shocked than knowing Song's identity. The master of the 9 nether prison was the legendary Dark Lord. Why did the mistress of the dark world come to the god world? It should be known that the people from the 9 nether prison were not welcomed in the divine world, and the dark mistress was feared by many deities. Therefore, the identity of a monster was definitely more exciting than Song's identity. It was to the extent that they were still in a daze for a long time. Lung Ruoxue saw their reaction and did not disturb them. Instead, she gave them enough time to digest this matter. On the other hand, Chengwu's face revealed a blank expression. After a long time, the first elder and the master of the Ning family came back to their senses. The two of them looked at each other, and then sighed in unison. By Shui-er's side, regardless of whether it was Song or Yaonyang, both of them had the strength to fight with Wu Xiao. Unfortunately, it was not appropriate for either of them to take action. Therefore, Shui-er had to rely on herself to deal with Wu Xiao. They were well aware of this. However, with the protection of these two, it would not be long before Shui-er became a powerful expert. This fact made the two of them full of expectations for Shui-er's future strength. After all, Master Ye's disciple and Wu Jing were absolutely mortal enemies. There was no way they could live in peace. Lung Ruoxue's next words further confirmed the thoughts in their hearts. Chapter 2078. We're all bosses 3. Following that, Lung Ruoxue continued, Godfather, first elder, as Master's disciple, I must avenge him. Therefore, I need a lot of help and allies. Although I really hope that Godfather and first elder can help me, I know that you're not just on your own. You also have to think about your families. Therefore, Lung Ruoxue wanted to say that she hoped they would consider it carefully. Even if they couldn't help, she wouldn't blame them. However, before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Master Ning. Stinky girl, I don't care what you're thinking in your heart. Don't even think about abandoning me to seek revenge alone. How could the master of the Ning family not understand Lung Ruoxue's thoughts? Hence, after he interrupted her, he immediately roared fiercely, his shrewd eyes filled with warning. Yup. Little girl, you can't leave us behind unless you look down on us. Although I'm not very strong, I know a lot of people, and many of them have conflicts with me. I believe that with your status as Master Ye's disciple, they will definitely be willing to help you. First Elder said after some thought. Godfather, Great Elder, I want say my thanks to you. Besides, I don't intend to let too many people know of my identity. After all, my strength is still too low, and others may not have confidence in me. Therefore, after seeing your brother's matter is resolved, I've decided to go into seclusion again. As for the other matters, I'll ask Great Elder and Godfather to take care of them. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought after listening to the two of them. You just focus on your closed-door cultivation. Leave the rest to us. The master of the Ning family promised. He was very happy that Shui-er was not being polite to him. Besides, Shui-er was right. Even if Shui-er was the Master Ye's disciple, those old guys who had been living in seclusion for many years and had a bad relationship with Wu Yan might not be willing to be loyal to her if they couldn't see her potential. However, he could help Shui-er contact them in advance. Whether she could subdue them or not depended on Shui-er's own ability. He couldn't help her on this point. He and Uncle Long had the same idea. The Great Elder had the same thoughts as him. Therefore, the two of them looked at each other again and had a tacit understanding. After explaining everything to them, Lung Ruoxue brought up the same old topic again. Godfather, the reason why I went to the Divine Master's estate was that I had a monster with me, so I didn't have to worry. Besides, I still have another important trump card, the Universal Bracelet. With them, I'm very confident. However, I didn't tell Godfather and Great Elder, because I didn't plan to tell you at that time, and I was afraid you would be worried. So you won't blame me, right? What's the use of blaming you? You've already been there. The master of the Ning family snorted and said helplessly. In fact, he was not angry anymore. He was only angry that Schwer had gone to the Divine Lord's estate without telling him. As for the secrets and trump cards that Schwer had not told him, he felt it was normal. After all, who did not have secrets? Even family members did not have to tell them. So, he was not angry about this. The first elder didn't think there was anything to be angry about. However, the words universal bracelet piqued his interest. Schwer, the universal bracelet you mentioned, is it Master US? The great elder asked excitedly. As a blacksmith, he had received guidance from Lord Yu before. Therefore, he was no stranger to these 3 words. However, the universal bracelet belonged to Lord Yu, so not many people knew about it. It was not as famous as the God-protecting pagoda. However, these 2 divine weapons were extremely rare innate divine weapons. They were also of great importance to the divine realm. And Lung Ruoxua nodded. Then, First Elder became even more agitated. He grabbed Lung Ruoxia's arm tightly and pleaded. Schwer, can you bring me in to take a look? He had been to the bracelet once, and it was unforgettable. The reason why he had wanted to make a spatial artifact that could accommodate people for so many years was also because he had been inspired by the bracelet. Therefore, he really hoped to revisit the universal bracelet. What? When Master Ning heard the Grand Elder's words and saw his reaction, his face was filled with question marks. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxua had an idea and brought them into the bracelet. Seeing the stranger in the bracelet, Qingju immediately appeared. Qingju, welcome. It's you, little guy. Qingju introduced himself as he stood in front of the great elder. Then he spoke like an elder. A little kid actually called a middle-aged man little fellow. No matter how one looked at it, this scene was extremely strange. When Lung Ruoxua and the others heard this, countless black lines could not help but slide down their foreheads. The great elder was so embarrassed that he wished he could find a hole to hide in. It was really too embarrassing, wasn't it? Haha. Old man, I didn't expect you to have this day. How do you feel being called a little kid? The master of the Ning family teased the great elder in a good mood when he heard Qingju call the great elder a little fellow. As soon as the master of the Ning family said this, the great elder couldn't help but hold up Qingju and implored with a depressed face. Little doll. You're the little one, so please don't call me that, okay? You can call me grandfather or great elder. Or you can call me old man. But just don't call me little guy. After hearing the first elder's words, Qingju rolled his eyes and said calmly, in my eyes, you're just a little kid, and all of you are. So don't act old in front of me. You should know that you can't judge a book by its cover. I'm not asking you to call me senior, so don't stop me from calling you little guys. The great elder was depressed. After holding it in for a long time, he didn't know how to refute it. At this time, Master Ning's eyes were also attracted by the beautiful scenery in the bracelet. Like a grandmother Lu entering the Grand View Garden, he felt that his eyes were not enough to see. Little girl, the spiritual qi here is so dense. It's really a good place to cultivate. The master of the Ning family exclaimed in admiration. As he spoke, his eyes were still searching around. When Qingju heard Master Ning's words, he said very proudly, of course. My place is much better than that broken God-protecting tower. The scenery is good, and the spiritual energy is gentle. The God-protecting pagoda can't compare at all. It still remembered that Song wanted to snatch its sister. Therefore, as long as he had the opportunity, he would spare no effort to smear Song Hehe, who asked Song not to be here. At this moment, Song was scratching the wall outside. Qingju thought happily. However, Qingju's words made the great elder and the master of the Ning family not know how to respond. It seemed that it would not be good for them to offend anyone. Helplessly, the master of the Ning family hurriedly changed the topic. Little girl, quickly take me on a good tour. He was desperate to leave Green Vessel, this ticking time bomb. Lung Ruoxua smiled helplessly before nodding her head and bringing her godfather around for a tour. The first elder, who wanted to follow them, was pulled back by Qingju. Little fellow, follow me to the artifact refining room. Let me see if your artifact refining level has improved. After he finished speaking, he dragged the great elder away. Even when Lung Ruoxue brought her godfather away from the bracelet, they did not see First Elder coming out of the armament refining room. However, just as he came out of the bracelet, Master Ning almost cried. Looking at the mess in his secret chamber, he wanted to cry but had no tears. The culprit who made his secret chamber this way did not have any self-awareness at all. After seeing them, he was still scratching the wall with all his might. Whoosh! Whoosh! His voice kept reverberating in Lung Ruoxue's ears. Lung Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines as she looked at her godfather apologetically. Then, she quickly stepped forward and pulled the frantic Song into her arms. This little guy had already destroyed a room in Brother Ning's house yesterday. Today he was actually destroying his godfather's secret room. It was really a headache. Song, who was being hugged by Lung Ruoxue, was like an abandoned puppy. His pitch-black eyes were filled with tears as he looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully. That little look of his was as pitiful as it could get. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue felt even more helpless. This little fellow had done something bad, and she was being wronged. What was this? Girl, you've abandoned me again. Song struck first and blamed Lung Ruoxue, causing more black lines to appear on Lung Ruoxue's forehead. You can't get into the bangle now. Lung Ruoxue stated the truth. You abandoned me. Song repeated. He didn't care if he could enter the bracelet or not. It was talking about how the girl had abandoned it, so it automatically filtered out some words. Seeing Song like this, Lung Ruoxue's head started to hurt. However, she could tell that Song was clearly trying to cover up the destruction that she had caused. Not only that, he was even reminding her that she had abandoned him. The demon was also well aware of Azure's thoughts, so he said directly, Shuer, since Master Ning's secret chamber was destroyed by it, you should give it to Master Ning as compensation. The demon was also trying to destroy the light bulbs around him. When Azure heard this, he was furious. You damn ghost. What did you just say? Song roared. The hair on his body stood up. He was really angry. Then it turned its little head to Master Ning and asked fiercely, Do you need me to compensate you? I don't need it. Master Ning's little heart trembled, and he was so scared that he quickly expressed his position. In his heart, he couldn't help but want to cry. Was he being shot while lying down? Why did you have to involve him in your jealousy? Unfortunately, he could not afford to offend either of these two. We're all lords. Chapter 2079. Voluntarily Sacrificed 1. Thinking of these two guys, the master of the Ning family felt extremely aggrieved. He was a big shot with a reputation and status in the divine world, but unfortunately, he was nothing in front of these two. However, in comparison, evildoer seemed to be easier to talk to than Song. At least, the two of them had been together for a long time, and there was also Shuer. He would more or less give him some face as his godfather. However, Song was different. No matter how he looked at him, he didn't find Song to be easy to talk to. If this little dragon cat went crazy, he was afraid that it would not even give face to Shuer. Thus, after weighing the pros and cons, he chose to appease Song. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not only destroy one secret room, but the entire Ning family would be destroyed. With this thought in mind, Master Ning's attitude towards Song became more and more kind. Of course, he also had to take care of the face of the evildoer, because he could already feel the other party's cold eyes. Why was he the one who was injured? Because of the discord between evildoer and Song. The master of the Ning family did not dare to arrange for Shuer and the others to stay in the forbidden area at the back of the mountain. Instead, he arranged the best guest rooms in the main courtyard for them. Lung Ruoxue had no objection to this. She was afraid that these two troublesome fellows would destroy the forbidden area in the back of the mountain in a fit of anger. If that happened, they would be in big trouble. Since they didn't stay in the forbidden area, the master of the Ning family had moved to the main courtyard from the forbidden area. However, the atmosphere in the main courtyard had become tense. Everyone was like a young wife every day. The second elder even personally led the elders of his family to report to Lung Ruoxue every day. Of course, it wasn't to see her. Their targets were the master of the Ning family and Liao Song. And in the past few days, Song's status in the Ning family had risen sharply, even surpassing the momentum of the Ning family's master. But the Ning family's master didn't care about this. Song was being coaxed and pampered every day. He was a little smug. However, after staying in the main courtyard for a few days, the master of the Ning family was so bored that he regretted it. Because the great elder, Shui and Cheng Wu were all in the bracelet, there was only Demon, Song, and him in the courtyard every day. Those two guys would definitely go to the house and tear down the tiles if they didn't fight. Of course, it was the two of them who fought, but the tiles that were torn down were his Ning family's tiles. Because of this, every day there would be banging sounds coming from the guest courtyard, causing the Ning family's housekeeper to be busy sending people to repair the guest courtyard every day. Later, the Ning family master simply ordered the housekeeper to arrange a team of people to stay in the guest courtyard all day long to wait for orders. As long as the two of them took action, they would be ready to maintain it at any time. As a result, the workload of some people in the Ning family instantly increased, but those people dared not say anything. However, Lung Ruoxue and the first elder, who were inside the bangle, were completely unaware of all this. One of them continued to make antidotes for Bing Yao, while the other was forced to do hard labor by Qing Ju, to be tested by Qing Ju every day. In this way, the great elder could clearly feel that his weapon refining skills, which had not improved for many years, had actually improved. This result made the great elder ecstatic, and he became more proactive in refining equipment. As for Lung Ruoxue, she stayed in the alchemy room in the purple bamboo house every day, observing the blood cherry blossom petal that she had only used a small portion of. Although it had already been separated from the main body, the vitality of this petal was equally tenacious. It actually still showed signs of life. This fact could not help but cause Lung Ruoxue to be extremely amazed. This flower was indeed a dangerous character. Fortunately, Song and Qing Ju had warned her before this. Thus, when she used the blood cherry blossom petals to refine pills, she would set up a barrier to prevent the situation inside the bangle from being leaked. However, how to resolve the blood cherry blossom's ruthless aura had always been a headache for her. According to common sense, as long as there was a violent aura in a medicinal herb, the auxiliary materials would generally be gentler medicinal herbs to neutralize the medicinal properties. However, in the antidote she was going to refine this time, there was a medicinal herb that was naturally at odds with the blood cherry. The herb was the fish scale flower. Both the fish scale flower and the blood cherry blossom had bright red petals. However, the fish scale flower was a heavenly treasure and could be used as both medicine and poison. On the other hand, the blood cherry blossom was a pure poisonous flower. Every time Lung Ruoxue placed these two petals into the pill furnace, they who were both king's flowers would fight each other for the main position. This was why her pills had been unable to be successfully refined. She had also studied this situation with the fish scale flower spirit, but the little thing didn't have any good solutions. After all, this result was determined by their nature. The status of the two flowers in the world of plants was not low. Naturally, they were not willing to be under others. Originally, if the two flowers did not interfere with each other, this situation would not exist. However, to refine them into medicinal pills, they could not continue to do things their own way, right? If that was really the case, the medicinal pill could never succeed. The blood cherry blossom was ruthless and overbearing. It would not allow the fish scale flower to stand on its head. Lung Ruoxue's brows furrowed at the thought of this. At this moment, a soft and sweet voice sounded in Lung Ruoxue's heart. "Sister, I have an idea, but I don't know if it will work." The fish scale flower spirit's voice rang out in Lung Ruoxue's heart. The moment Lung Ruoxue heard this, she was overjoyed and quickly moved the little fellow in front of her. The moment the little fellow appeared, it pounced straight into Lung Ruoxue's arms. After being intimate with her for a while, it blushed slightly and said with embarrassment, "Big sister, why don't you try throwing my petal and the blood cherry petal into the pill furnace together? I will find a way to kill it and make it obedient." What? Lung Ruoxue's face was filled with confusion. Clearly, she did not understand what the fish scale flower spirit meant. What do you mean by "I will find a way to kill it"? How was the little fish scale flower spirit going to kill the blood cherry blossom? Previously, she had melted the petals of the fish scale flower and the blood cherry blossom separately before mixing the two medicinal liquids together. However, she had been unable to do so. Now, it seemed that the little fish scale flower wanted her to put the petals of both flowers into the pill furnace at the same time. Would that work? One must know that in the pill recipe that Qingju gave her, it was written that the two ingredients should be put in separately. Seeing Lung Ruoxia's suspicious look, the little fish-scaled flower spirit assured her, "Sister, just believe me this once. I'm sure my plan will work. Then let's try it." Seeing the little fish scale flower's confident look, Lung Ruoxia did not want to hurt his self-confidence. After all, this little fellow did it all for her. Seeing that Lung Ruoxia had agreed, the little fish scale flower was very happy. It felt that it could finally do something for its sister. However, when it looked at Lung Ruoxia's eyes, there was a trace of unknown meaning. "Sister, the temperature in the furnace is high enough. Quickly throw our flower petals in." "All right." Lung Ruoxia was not suspicious of him. She found the right time to throw two similarly red flower petals that were emitting different auras into the furnace that had been warming up for a long time. However, just as she threw the two flower petals into the furnace, the small fish scale flower turned into a stream of light and jumped into the furnace. Chapter 2080. Voluntarily Sacrificed 2. Little Fish. When Lung Ruoxia saw this, she turned pale with fright. She hurriedly tried to extinguish the fire in the furnace, but the little fellow who was fighting with the blood cherry blossom petals for the highest position in the furnace smiled at Lung Ruoxia and stopped her. "Sister, don't waste all your efforts. Otherwise, my sacrifice will be in vain." Hearing this, Lung Ruoxia's beautiful eyes could not help but tear up. Her tears flowed uncontrollably as her heart ached. This was definitely not a situation she wanted to see. Although she wanted to cure her senior brother, she could not sacrifice these adorable little fellows as the price. When the little fish scale flower spirit saw this, it quickly coaxed, "Big sister, don't cry. This is the destiny of our treasures. I'm very happy to be able to help you save Brother Bingyao." Yes, he was willing to sacrifice himself to cure Brother Bingyao, who he had never met before, because he didn't want to see his sister frowning all day long. He wanted her to be happy. If he could help his sister, he would be very happy. However, Lung Ruoxia listened to the little fish scale flower spirit's words and stubbornly wanted to put out the fire. Although these little fellows called her big sister, she treated them as her own children. She had always been working hard to provide these cute little children with a carefree living environment. Therefore, she absolutely did not want to see such a situation happening. At this moment, two streams of tears flowed down the little fish-scaled flower spirit's face. He looked at Lung Ruoxia longingly and said in a choked voice, "Sister, don't. I'm doing this willingly. It's the greatest wish of all elves to be able to do something for big sister. Please fulfill my wish, big sister. Elder sister, please help him." Qingju appeared in the alchemy room of the purple bamboo house. The small fire ginseng and the others also appeared with him. "Sister, if it were me, I would also be willing to sacrifice." The small fire ginseng also said, "Mom, there's still me." Little fire lotus also expressed his opinion. "Big sister, we are already very satisfied that our precious materials can cultivate into human form. If you want us to sacrifice ourselves now, we are very willing." The 10,000-year-old dragon's beard grass said, "Girl, you should respect little you heir's choice." Lil Fire also opened its mouth to speak, but that pair of fiery red eyes were somewhat wet. How could the other little fellows not be the same? However, this was the fish scale flower spirit's own choice. Fairies were the darlings of nature, and they believed in letting nature take its course. As such, they could only respect the fish scale flower spirit's decision and could not object to it. Even though they would feel sad for losing such a small friend, they could not stop it. As for Lung Ruoxia, when she heard the words of these little fellows, her heart felt extremely heavy and sorrowful. When she saw the determined look on the little fish scale flower spirit's face, her heart ached even more. These little fellows were her children. However, now that she had to sacrifice herself to cure her senior brother, how could she bear this? At this moment, the blood cherry blossom petals in the pill furnace seemed to have sensed that the end of the world was coming. They actually started to move. Seeing this, the little fish scale flower spirit looked at Lung Ruoxue longingly. Then, without any hesitation, it turned into a stream of light and attached itself to the blood cherry blossom petals that had not completely melted. It continued to fight with the blood cherry blossom petals. Little Yor. Little Yor. Seeing the fish scale flower spirit's actions, Lung Ruoxue cried out. Her heart was bleeding as she bit her lower lip. Tears flowed uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. When the other little fellows saw this scene, they also looked at the pill furnace with tears in their eyes. After a long time, the blood cherry blossom in the pill furnace finally became obedient and slowly turned into a pool of liquid. The fish scale petals that were surrounded by spirit chi were also slowly melting. Seeing this, they all knew that the little fish scale flower spirit had succeeded. His sacrifice had been worth it. Suddenly, the fish scale flower spirit's voice sounded out from within the pill furnace. Big sister, quickly throw in the other herbs. This time, the fish scale flower spirit's voice was much weaker. Little Yor, can you come out now? Upon hearing this voice, Lung Ruoxue asked, unwilling to give up. Sister, there's no other way. If I leave now, all my previous efforts will be in vain. Quickly throw the other herbs in. While I still have a trace of spiritual intelligence, will help you refine the pill. The little fish-scaled flower spirit's pale face appeared in the pill furnace. Lung Ruoxue and the other children's hearts ached when they saw this. Lung Ruoxue's hands trembled nonstop. She had no choice. When Qingju saw this, he could only help Lung Ruoxue throw the other medicinal herbs into the pill furnace. In an instant, all of the medicinal ingredients had melted, and the aura of the small fish scale flower was also gradually disappearing. When Qingju saw this, he couldn't help but loudly remind, Sister, it's time to form the pill. Following that, a delicate fragrance wafted out from the pill refining room. Lung Ruoxue endured her heartache and cast a few spells. After a while, the medicinal fragrance became even stronger and shook everyone's hearts. They knew that this was all thanks to the little fish scale flower spirit. And if these elves were willing to be refined into medicinal pills, the medicinal effects would also be doubled. However, even though they had successfully refined the pill, it was a pity that no one was happy, especially Lung Ruoxue. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she sat in front of the pill furnace in a daze. Even the pills were collected by Qingju for her. At this moment, she did not want to think about anything else. After keeping the pills, Qingju looked at Lung Ruoxue, who seemed to have lost her soul. He sighed and then moved the evildoer from the outside into the bracelet. Evildoer, who was bickering with Tsang, was slightly surprised to see himself in the alchemy room of the purple bamboo house. After a while he noticed Lung Ruoxue's strange behavior, and quickly ran to her side, pulling the dazed Lung Ruoxue into his arms. What's wrong with Shue'er? The evil demon's heart ached when he saw Lung Ruoxue's tear-stained face. He could not help but emit a cold aura as he stared at Qingju and questioned him. Little Yor is dead. Qingju explained straightforwardly. Little fish. That little fish scale flower? The demon was stunned for a moment before he replied. However, he was tactful and did not ask Qingju how that little flower died. After all, looking at Shue'er's current appearance, he could guess a thing or two. Yes. Qingju nodded and then shouted. Damn it, quickly put away your cold energy. These little guys don't like it. In fact, not only did those little fellows not like it, they simply couldn't stand it. Look, just a slight release of the devilish cold air. These little children were all scared to the point that their faces turned pale, and their small bodies kept shaking. And among these children, the only one who was not afraid of the evildoer was probably that little fire lotus. After all, little fire lotus called the evildoer daddy. So, after the evildoer appeared, little fire lotus also threw himself into the evildoer's arms with tears in his eyes, and began to cry loudly. Seeing this, Qingju had no choice but to take the other children out of the alchemy room, leaving the family of 3 here. Looking at Lung Ruoxue, who was in a dazed state, as well as little Huolian, who was bawling his eyes out, the evildoer felt extremely helpless. He could only hug them in silence until little Huolian had enough of crying. Only then did he tell the evildoer what had happened while choking with sobs. After the evildoer had finished listening, he could not help but sigh. No wonder Shui was so sad. She would never have thought that she would have to sacrifice Xiao Yu to cure Bing Yao. Chapter 2081. Voluntarily Sacrifice 3. Dad. This is the destiny of our natural treasures, and to be able to refine pills for the people we like is our greatest honor. After explaining the whole situation, Little Fire Lotus couldn't help but sigh. Yes, their destiny was to sacrifice. And whether the sacrifice was worth it, it could only depend on their luck. If it was for the person they liked, to them it would be the most perfect ending. Therefore, Little Fire Lotus could empathize with the feelings of the fish scale flower spirit. If it was him, if his mother needed it, he would also be willing to sacrifice himself. However, it didn't dare to say such words out loud. Otherwise, its mother and father would be angry. In contrast to the slightly lower air pressure in the alchemy room, the atmosphere in the space was also unusually dull. Most of the elves and orcs were silent. Seeing this, Cheng Wu, who did not know what was going on, did not dare to speak loudly. No one or orcs were willing to tell him what had happened. The first elder, who had not come out of the refining room for a long time, also came out with a suspicious look. He was here to look for Qingju, because Qingju had not gone in to look for him for a long time. However, when he came out to take a look, he suddenly realized that something seemed to have happened that he did not know about. However, those who obviously knew the truth were not willing to pay attention to him. When he wanted to ask Chengwu about the situation, he realized that Chengwu was also at a loss. At this moment, Song, who was staying in the guest house with the master of the Ning family, also showed a state of anxiety. As for Cold One's frustration, the most direct display was scratching the wall. The master of the Ning family looked at his most beautiful and luxurious guest house, which was now full of holes, and held his forehead in depression. Even the most diligent maintenance team of the Ning family could not keep up with the speed of destruction. Basically, after repairing a place, it would be destroyed beyond recognition in a short time. The staff in charge of the repair could be said to be full of complaints about this. However, they had been warned by their families long ago, so they did not dare to express their thoughts. In the end, it was the kind master of the Ning family who let them stop the maintenance. Only then did the staff in charge of the maintenance really breathe a sigh of relief and be free. After sending the maintenance team away, only Master Ning and Song stayed in the guest house. Since the disappearance of the evildoer, Song's temper had grown day by day. Over time, even if Master Ning was slow, he also felt that something was wrong. On a certain day, the master of the Ning family calmly sat down next to Song, who was scratching the wall, and asked gently, "Senior Song, what's wrong with you these days? Are you in a bad mood?" In fact, what he wanted to ask was whether the old man was going through menopause. Otherwise, why would he be so restless? Yes. Song didn't even raise his head, and his claws on the wall didn't stop. Caw, caw. His voice echoed in the ears of the man and the beast. Can you tell me?" The master of the Ning family probed. In fact, he was quite bored these days. Shui and the great elder were not here, and there was no one to talk to him. As for the evildoer and Song, he couldn't count on them. These two guys would fight whenever they saw each other. There was no room for him to intervene between them. He could have treated their fight as a show to kill time, but now because of the sudden disappearance of the evildoer, he couldn't see them. Because of this, Song only cared about scratching the wall and didn't care about him. Thinking of this, Master Ning's depression could not be described in words. "I don't know." These words were said through gritted teeth, and his tone was quite fierce and resentful, which stunned the master of the Ning family. "You don't know? You don't know and you're in a bad mood?" It looked like he was really going through menopause. What was this good? The master of the Ning family was in a dilemma. Following that, he heard Azure say with a bitter expression, "Nyo is in a bad mood, so my mood is also bad." "Arg, what's wrong with Shui?" The master of the Ning family was shocked and asked with concern. "I don't know. I didn't recognize her as my master, so I could only sense that she was in a terrible mood, but I didn't know why." "Woo. Nyo doesn't want me anymore. I tried to call her, but she ignored me." Song choked with sobs, His originally pitch-black eyes were filled with tears. When Master Ning saw this, his heart clenched. Although he wanted to comfort Song, he didn't know what had happened. Even if he wanted to comfort him, he didn't know where to start. More importantly, after hearing Song's words, he started to worry about Lung Ruoxue. What exactly had happened to make Song feel that Shue'er was in a bad mood? Could it be that little brat Yes' disappearance was also related to this matter? Thinking of this possibility, the master of the Ning family sighed again and again. Hearing his sigh, Song's mood became even worse, and his sobs sounded in their ears from time to time. Senior Song, do you have a way to contact Qingju? Ask him and you'll know, right? After thinking for a long time, the master of the Ning family suggested. He also ignored me. Woo! Master Ning's words made Azure's mood even more depressed. It knew that something must have happened, but no one was willing to tell it that it had been forgotten. This fact made its mood sink to the bottom. With this thought, the wall was unlucky again. Listening to the moans in his ears, as well as the occasional low cry, the master of the Ning family felt his head hurt. What should he do? Suddenly, Azure, who had been scratching the wall, went crazy again. All the hair on its body stood up, and the chi on its body exploded. Seeing this, the master of the Ning family immediately jumped out of the danger zone. And then he heard a boom. With a loud sound, the houses in the guest house collapsed one after another like dominoes. This huge commotion had also attracted the attention of the second elder and the others. Looking at the ruined guest house, everyone's forehead was full of black lines. What kind of madness was Senior Tsang up to? The level of madness had actually advanced. He had been scratching the wall all the time. Although the beauty of the house had been destroyed, at least the house was still there. But now the entire house had collapsed. It was impossible to repair it. He could only rebuild it. Just thinking about how much money they would have to spend to rebuild the house, the elders' hearts ached. However, they didn't dare to ask Senior Tsang for compensation. Otherwise, the entire Ning family might be in danger. After the destruction, Azure's mood improved a little, and he considerately took out a storage ring from his previous collection and handed it to the second elder as compensation. The second elder took the ring and looked at it. He was so scared that his face turned pale. The other elders looked at his expression and were very surprised. They couldn't help but wonder if the money Senior Tsang gave was not enough to rebuild the guest house. In fact, it didn't matter if it wasn't enough. They didn't intend to let Senior Tsang pay for it. And when they heard the second elder say that the compensation Senior Tsang gave was enough to rebuild the entire Ning family's main residence, they were just as scared as the second elder, their faces pale. Could it be that Senior Tsang wanted them to rebuild the entire Ning family's main residence? With this thought in mind, the second elder first held a small meeting with the other elders and discussed it. They came to an important conclusion: Senior Tsang indeed had such intentions. Then they told the Ning family master the result of the elders' discussion. And with the tacit consent of the master, the clansmen living in the Ning family's main residence began to prepare to move without a sound. However, Tsang, who was ready to explode at any moment, didn't know anything. It would never have thought that the storage ring it had given to the second elder of the Ning family would cause such a huge chain reaction. Until a few days later, when Lung Ruoxue and the demon came out of the bangle together, Tsang's mood started to improve. Seeing its future master whom it had missed for a long time, Azure took a big step forward and threw itself into Lung Ruoxue's arms. It refused to get up and stared at Lung Ruoxue with a face full of hidden bitterness. Its black eyes were filled with tears as it stared at Lung Ruoxue. Those wet black eyes were filled with deep accusation. "Girl, you're a bad guy. How can you abandon me?" Tsang choked as he complained. "I'm sorry, there was an accident." Looking at Tsang's dirty body, it was obvious that he had cried. The fine hair on his face and body were all tangled together. Lung Ruoxue said guiltily. She knew that Tsang was worried about her. However, for the past few days, she had not been able to adjust her mood. Her entire person was in a dazed and soulless sealed state. She did not want to think about anything and did not want to do anything. His mind went blank. Her heart was also in pain. After a long period of time, coupled with the silent company, care, and support of the evildoer, her mood finally adjusted a little. Although she was still sad, at least she would not shut herself in like she did a few days ago. Girl, you still have me. Hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, Azure didn't ask her what had happened. Instead, it reminded her of its existence. It didn't want to be excluded anymore. It didn't feel good. Chapter 2082, Bingio's Dilemma 1. Yes. Lung Ruoxia nodded her head. She still had Song and many other relatives in Beastie. Furthermore, her condition these few days had made them very worried. Hence, it was time for her to pull herself together. As for Xiaoyuer, although she was willing to sacrifice herself, all of this was also caused by Wu Jing. Therefore, she blamed it on Wu Jing. Fog Ice. Sooner or later, she would take revenge for her master and little Yu. She would not let their sacrifice be in vain. Thinking of this, she raised her head, and was about to look for her godfather to tell him about her next plan. Only then did she realize that the guest house she was in seemed to be under construction. No, to be precise, they were rebuilding. Although the ruins of the guest house had long been cleaned up, there was only the frame of a house in front of her. Her godfather was standing not far away, looking at her with a worried face. Shuer. Feeling Lung Ruoxia's gaze, Master Ning called out in embarrassment. He seemed to have been caught peeking at Shuer. Oh. It was really awkward. Godfather, what about this house? Lung Ruoxia's face was filled with suspicion. Even though she wanted to ask if the reconstruction of the house was because of Tsang, she could not bring herself to ask this question. Tsang did not look guilty at all, and was rather calm. In this case, she could not just pin this bad thing on Tsang. The house is a little old, so I'm going to rebuild it while you're not around. The Ning family's master said with a smile. This was the excuse that the Ning family had discussed a long time ago. They definitely couldn't let Tsang feel anything wrong, and they couldn't let Lung Ruoxia see anything wrong. Otherwise, Shuer would feel guilty. Oh. Lung Ruoxia nodded her head lightly and didn't continue asking. She then told her godfather directly, Godfather, senior brother's antidote has been made. I plan to go back tomorrow. Alright, I'll go back with you, the master of the Ning family said. He was really worried about Shuer. He hadn't forgotten that Song had said that Shuer was in a bad mood. However, when he saw Shuer come out, he didn't dare to ask, afraid that it would hurt her. If there's a chance, I'd better ask that brat Yi. He thought to himself. The next day, before Lung Ruoxia and the rest left, Second Elder led the other elders to send them off. When she saw their reluctant expressions as they looked at Song, she felt helpless. They probably couldn't bear to part with their godfather as well. However, she didn't dare to say this out loud, for fear that it would make her godfather sad. After they set out, they returned to the foot of the mountain in the land of demons in less than half a day. Lung Ruoxia moved Cheng Wu and the first elder out of the bangle, and the four of them and one beast walked back to the mountain. Uncle Dragon and Aojia had sensed their auras, and were waiting at the entrance. Song greeted them when he saw them. Two little fellows, are you all right? Good. When the two of them heard how the little guy addressed them, black lines appeared on their foreheads. However, they still replied very enthusiastically. I've missed you guys so much. Song sighed. We missed you too. Uncle Dragon and Aojia quickly said. At this moment, Lung Ruoxia, who saw them being so polite, couldn't stand it and said, Go in. Let's not chat at the door. Right. Come in quickly, I've specially asked someone to prepare some food for you. When Uncle Long heard this, it was as if he had heard a pardon. Before Lung Ruoxia returned, she had already sent him a voice transmission saying that she would be back today. Hence, he had hurriedly instructed his men to prepare food, and had been waiting for them for a long time. After they entered the courtyard, Uncle Long brought Lung Ruoxia and the others to the dining hall. After the meal, the group moved to the garden. Lung Ruoxia told Uncle Long and the others that Senior Bingyao's antidote had been successfully concocted. Uncle Long and the others were overjoyed when they heard that. Then they went to the Endless Ocean with Lung Ruoxia. When they arrived at Uncle Long's residence in the Endless Ocean, they fed the antidote to Bingyao. However, Bingyao didn't wake up immediately. Lung Ruoxia, the demon, and Uncle Long had no choice but to stay in the endless ocean and wait for Bing Yao to wake up. During this time, Lung Ruoxue did not dare to leave Bing Yao's side. After all, she was not 100% sure if the antidote would be able to cure her senior brother. However, she trusted Qingju and Xiao Yu. She also believed that Xiao Yu would not sacrifice herself for nothing. Therefore, she kept her eyes on Bing Yao, afraid that her senior brother would feel any discomfort. However, after consuming the antidote, her senior brother's condition had been very stable, and he did not continue to bleed. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was slightly relieved. 3 days later, Bing Yao's injuries were healed, and he finally woke up. "Shui, where am I?" After he woke up, Bing Yao quickly asked Lung Ruoxue when he saw her. Lung Ruoxue had already returned to her original appearance, and was no longer a man with a girl's heart. "Senior brother, you're at Uncle Long's house in the Heartless Sea." Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she explained. "The Endless Sea? Uncle Long? Could it be the one from the Endless Sea?" Bing Yao was a little surprised. How did Shui know that person? Although he rarely moved around the divine realm these few years, he had done a detailed investigation of the various forces in the divine realm in recent years. He naturally knew of Uncle Long's great name, but at the same time, he also knew that Uncle Long was a low-profile beast who had been living in seclusion for many years. He did not expect Shui to know him. Therefore, other than being surprised, he was even more curious. However, before he could ask Lung Ruoxue about the details, Uncle Long and the demon had already walked to his side. Looking at Bing Yao, Uncle Long suppressed his excitement and asked, "Bing Yao, do you still remember me?" "And you are." Looking at the familiar Uncle Long, Bing Yao thought hard. However, he wasn't good at remembering people's faces, so he couldn't figure out who this person was. More importantly, this person seemed to know him. "I am Uncle Long. We have met once before. You were still very young at that time, so you probably don't remember me anymore." Uncle Long was very considerate and took the initiative to give Bing Yao an out. After all, he couldn't just say that his memory was bad, so he didn't remember him. "I really don't remember, but you look familiar. So we've really met before." Bing Yao laughed heartlessly. Lung Ruoxue's mouth twitched when she heard Bing Yao's reply. This senior brother was too naive. Fortunately, it was Uncle Long who said this. If it was someone else, wouldn't senior brother Xiaobai fall into his trap? One had to know that this was the most common method of hitting on people in the world she was in her previous life. However, even though her mind was running wild, she believed that Uncle Long and her senior brother must have met before. Otherwise, he and Aojia would not have been so excited to see her senior brother. When Uncle Long heard what Bing Yao said, he nodded and said, "We've been looking for you." Chapter 2083, Bingio's Dilemma 2. Looking for me? Why are you looking for me? Do I owe you money? Bing Yao said with a puzzled face. This time, no matter how happy and calm Uncle Long was, he was also in a mess. On the other hand, Lung Ruoxue was even more certain that her senior brother was not just an ordinary white. How could she have thought that she owed someone money? Could it be that senior brother had borrowed money from many people? Of course, Bing Yao did not know about Lung Ruoxue's guess. However, he looked at Uncle Long with suspicion. Uncle Long's mouth twitched when he saw this and he spoke again. "You don't owe me money. We came to you in the hope of avenging Master Yu. However, we searched for many years but couldn't find your whereabouts. Our strength was limited, so after we couldn't get revenge, we chose to live in seclusion. Oh, but I don't remember you being my master's subordinates." Bing Yao's handsome face was filled with confusion. "We are indeed not Master Ye's subordinates, but our desire to avenge Master Yu is no less than his subordinates. Once, we also established an organization in private, but we didn't have a backbone. After many failed attempts at revenge, some people's hearts began to slacken. Therefore, the organization had to be disbanded, and we went into seclusion." Uncle Long explained simply. "So you're saying that you came looking for me back then, because you hoped that I would lead you to avenge your master?" Bing Yao finally understood. He looked at Uncle Long with a gentle gaze. He knew that his master had a lot of loyal followers and fans in the divine world. However, these followers and fans who were not acknowledged by his master were willing to take revenge for his master. Even if they failed, they were still worthy of his respect. Uncle Long nodded after Bing Yao finished. Seeing this, Bing Yao was extremely excited. Because of this, Bing Yao and Uncle Long became closer. The two of them had even forgotten about Lung Ruoxue and started chatting affectionately. Seeing them chatting as if there was no one else around, Lung Ruoxue and the demon looked at each other helplessly, and the two of them left tactfully. Uncle Long and Bing Yao talked about many things from the past, especially about Master Ye's past. The atmosphere was very lively. By the time they realized that Lung Ruoxue and the demon had disappeared, it was already late at night. The two of them walked out of the room, and happened to see Lung Ruoxue playing with a little dolphin. Uncle Long had never seen this little dolphin before, so it was obvious that it had just been born not long ago. Where did this little fellow come from? Uncle Long asked the little dolphin in a low voice, so that it wouldn't be frightened. However, when the little dolphin saw Uncle Long, it instinctively trembled and immediately hid in Lung Ruoxue's arms. Upon seeing this, Uncle Long was helpless. Was he that fierce? He had always been very kind to these little guys in the endless sea, okay? The old dolphin brought it. Lung Ruoxue caressed the little dolphin's smooth and tender skin as she chuckled. That old man is here? Uncle Long asked. Yes, but seeing that Uncle Long was busy, it left tactfully. As for this little fellow, it kept sticking to me after seeing me, so the old dolphin had no choice but to let it stay. Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. Once Blue, who was lying on her shoulder, heard this, she immediately bared her teeth and scared the little dolphin. Damn it, it actually dared to fight for its favor. Wasn't it courting death? However, in front of its future master, it couldn't show an expression that it couldn't wait to get rid of that eyesore, or else Neo would definitely be angry. But what made it depressed was that the little fellow was not afraid of it at all. Damn it! It was much more capable than the old whale, but this little dolphin was only afraid of the old whale, and didn't take it seriously at all. This fact made it feel quite aggrieved. However, it couldn't possibly argue with an insensible child. AI. Just thinking about it made him depressed. Hehe. Shui Er's affinity with the beasts is something that the beasts cannot refuse. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words and glancing at the depressed Song, Uncle Long smiled and spoke. Lung Ruoxue couldn't deny Uncle Long's words, because many of her beasts had said the same thing. Then she turned her beautiful eyes to Bing Yao and asked with concern. Senior brother, do you feel any discomfort? I'm fine, Shui Er, sorry to trouble you. He had heard from Uncle Long that Shui Er had gone to the Divine Master's manor, in order to get the antidote for him. No one knew better than him how dangerous the Divine Master's manor was. However, it was all thanks to someone's help that she was able to get the petals of the ice fog. Thinking of this, Bing Yao turned his gaze to Tsong. He wanted to thank Xia Tsong, but he didn't even look at him. This fact made him very conflicted. When his master was still alive, he had heard that Song's temperament was uncertain, and his emotions were unpredictable. However, he didn't expect that it would actually take a fancy to Shui Er. This was definitely good news for him. As he thought of this, he had already walked over to Lung Ruoxue's side. He looked at Song and took the initiative to speak. Song, thank you for saving my life. Tisk. Who needs your thanks? I didn't do it to save you. Song Jun told the truth, and the truth was often hurtful, so Bing Yao was hit hard. Looking at Bing Yao's troubled and darkened face, Lung Ruoxue burst out laughing. Her laughter attracted Bing Yao's angry gaze, but at the same time, he felt two strong forces coming towards him. Suddenly, Bing Yao held his breath and looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully, then found a place to draw circles. Sop. A child with someone protecting him was a treasure, and a child without someone protecting him was a blade of grass. And now, Shui Er was the treasure in his eyes, and he was naturally the poor blade of grass with no one to rely on. In addition, he couldn't help but roar in his heart. What's so great about people with backing? He was indeed amazing. Whoa. This fact made Bing Yao feel depressed, worried, and a little mad. However, he had no place to vent his emotions, because he couldn't afford to offend the two people who had caused him this. Well, the more Bing Yao thought about it, the more he felt sorry for himself. After all, he was once the second generation of an official. But now, he was going to be bullied by those two unscrupulous guys, and there was a junior sister watching the fun from the side, laughing so hard that she couldn't stop. Sob. You can't be such a bully. At this moment, Uncle Long walked up with a face full of sympathy and patted Bing Yao's shoulder to comfort him. He didn't know what to say. Ai. Poor Bing Yao, he had no status in front of a certain someone. He then turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Schwer, let's go back. Otherwise my family will be worried. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded slightly. Then, she sent the little dolphin, who was reluctant to part with her, back to the dolphin clan. They then returned to their home in the land of demons. Chapter 2084. Bingio's Dilemma 3. When they arrived at the Lung family's main house, the crowd greeted Bing Yao warmly. At this time, Bing Yao finally felt that he had some status in front of these people. Everyone's concern for him also made him feel good. Although he kept emphasizing that his injuries were all healed, everyone was still worried and let him rest for a few more days. A few days later, Bing Yao looked great. With Uncle Long's approval, he was finally able to leave his room and get out of prison. The first thing he did after he was released was to look for Lung Ruoxue. However, he couldn't find Schwer even after walking around a few times. He had no choice but to grab Uncle Long and ask, Uncle Long, have you seen Schwer? I didn't see her, but Schwer is in a bad mood. You should leave her alone. Uncle Long sighed and said helplessly. On the second day after they returned, he had dragged that brat Yi to understand the matter clearly. After knowing this, his mood was more or less affected. Such an adorable little doll was gone just like that. It was really a pity. One had to know that he had even carried that little fellow before. Why are you in a bad mood? Bing Yao didn't understand. Schwer was fine a few days ago. Why are you in a bad mood all of a sudden? He could not understand. In reality, Lung Ruoxue acted as if nothing had happened a few days ago because she was afraid that Uncle Long and the others would be worried. Although she had adjusted her emotions, there were still times when she would still think of the cute little fish and her heart would still ache. Therefore, after treating her senior brother, she entered the bracelet again, wanting to accompany the little fish. At this time, Tsang, who was lying in Uncle Long's arms, looked at Bing Yao, who was confused. He couldn't help but sneer. It's all because of a certain idiot. Looking at the unfriendly Tsang, Bing Yao had an idea. Was he the idiot he was referring to? However, he also knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of Tsang, so he could only turn his gaze to Uncle Long. Seeing this, Uncle Long sighed again. Then he told Bing Yao what had happened. After hearing it, Bing Yao was silent. This was a fact that he had never thought of. At the same time, he felt a little guilty. He knew very well how difficult it was to cultivate with heavenly treasures. However, a little fellow whom he had never met before had sacrificed himself to refine an antidote for him. This made him feel very upset. After a long silence, Bing Yao turned around and left the garden without a word. He went back to his room and summoned Qingju loudly. Then he was moved into the bracelet. Looking at the little boy in front of him, Bing Yao quickly asked, Where's Schwer? Where is he? Sister is in the herb garden. After Qingju finished speaking, he disappeared. He did not want to see anyone now. After hearing Qingju's location, Bing Yao headed straight for the herb garden. However, he did not find Lung Ruoxue. In fact, the herb garden was divided into an inner garden and an outer garden. Most of the herbs in the outer garden were ordinary herbs, while most of the herbs in the inner garden were heavenly and earthly treasures. Some of the poisonous herbs were arranged to be planted in other places by Qingju. As for Bing Yao, he was only in the outer garden of the herb garden. Naturally, he would not be able to find Lung Ruoxue. Just as Bing Yao was looking for Lung Ruoxue like a headless fly, a chubby little kid suddenly appeared in front of him. He glanced at him and said, Brother Qingju asked me to bring you to see my sister. Thank you, Bing Yao said softly. He didn't know what this little guy's true form was, but the strong spiritual qi around him made him very clear that this little boy was also the spirit of a treasure. Entering the inner garden, Bing Yao was surprised to find that there were many children in front of him. He didn't know most of them. It seemed that Shui Er's herb garden had a lot of new members while he was away. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue was standing in front of a withered flower. The flower was about half the height of a person, and its leaves were shaped like fish scales. The huge flower head was lowered, and it was obvious that the flower had suffered a lot of damage. When Bing Yao saw the tree, he knew that it was the fish scale flower that saved him. Shui. Bing Yao walked to Lung Ruoxue's side and called out softly, "Senior brother, why have you come?" Lung Ruoxue was a little surprised to see Bing Yao. She did not plan to let her senior brother know about this, so that he would not feel pressured. However, it seemed like her senior brother knew everything. Bing Yao didn't answer Lung Ruoxue's question. Instead, he walked to the side of the withered fish scale flower and caressed its yellow leaves. He said gratefully, "Little guy, thank you for saving me. I really don't know how to thank you, but don't worry, I will take good care of your body in the future and wait for you to cultivate a spirit body again." Although he wasn't an alchemist and didn't know much about herbs, he felt that since the fish scale flower in front of him had formed a spirit body, it shouldn't die so easily. The current state of the fish scale flower should be a form of self-protection after the plant was severely damaged. He believed that in time, the fish scale flower would definitely be able to form a spirit body again, but this would take time. When Lung Ruoxue heard what Bing Yao said, she looked at him in shock and asked anxiously, "Senior brother, what did you say?" I just feel that the fish scale flower spirit won't die so easily. I feel that he will come back to life." Looking at the excited Lung Ruoxue, Bing Yao said nervously. He didn't know if his thoughts were right, but he seemed to have heard his master say something similar before. However, he had never paid much attention to such things, so he wasn't very sure. However, when Lung Ruoxue heard her senior brother's words, she was still excited for a long time. After a long while, she remembered that she had to ask Qingju. After summoning Qingju, Lung Ruoxue said directly, "Qingju, can the little fish be resurrected?" After she finished speaking, Lung Ruoxue stared at Qingju, afraid that he would say no. When Qingju saw this, he secretly glared at Bing Yao and could only sigh helplessly. In fact, in theory, Xiao Yu was indeed not really dead. After all, his original body was still around. However, he could not be sure if Xiao Yu could be resurrected because he had never seen anything like this before. Furthermore, it was extremely difficult to resurrect Xiao Yu. First, he had to save his original body. However, with the extent of the damage to the fish scale flower, it would be extremely difficult to resurrect his original body. At least, he had no confidence at all. He did not tell his sister about this because he was afraid that he would disappoint her even more if he gave her too much hope. Therefore, he would not say anything before he had absolute confidence. However, everything was ruined by that idiot Bing Yao. He was so angry that he wanted to bite Bing Yao. This useless idiot. At this moment, Qingju's evaluation of Bing Yao had hit rock bottom. However, Lung Ruoxue did not give Qingju and Bing Yao the chance to continue their flirtatious gazes. She carried Qingju and looked into his dark eyes. She asked again in a serious tone, "Qingju, is there any possibility of Xiao Yu being resurrected?" "In theory there is. However, it's very difficult to actually do it, because it's already very difficult for his main body to survive." After thinking for a while, Qingju decided to tell the truth. He did not want his sister to have endless fantasies. That would not be beneficial to her cultivation. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she could only sigh softly before saying, "Qingju, no matter what method you use, you have to try. It would be best if little Yu can be resurrected, but if that doesn't work, we can't force her." "I'm relieved that sister thinks this way," Qingju said with satisfaction. He was very impressed with Lung Ruoxue's attitude. Only with the mentality of not being forced and to adapt to the situation would one's path of cultivation be smoother and smoother. Hence, he had high hopes for Lung Ruoxue. As for that stupid Bing Yao, forget it. As he thought of this, Qingju turned to look at Bing Yao. He then looked at him fastidiously and said, "You big idiot. Be more careful in the future, and do what you can. Otherwise, no one might be able to save you the next time you get injured." Qingju's words were rather impolite, and Bing Yao's face turned red. Then he mumbled and promised with an embarrassed face, I'll be careful in the future. If there's anything you can do for the fish scale flower, please tell me. I'll do my best. You won't be able to escape, don't worry. Qingju said impolitely. After he finished speaking, he disappeared without another word. After Qingju left, Bing Yao couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead. He was still in a state of shock. He couldn't help but think to himself, Qingju is getting more and more imposing. As expected of the weapon spirit of an innate divine weapon. Even he felt a trace of pressure. However, it seemed that he was losing his position in front of Qingju. Thinking of this, he really wanted to cry but had no tears. At this moment, Lung Ruoxua glanced at the depressed Bing Yao and patted his head to comfort him. She smiled and said, Senior brother, calm down. Qingju doesn't have any ill intentions. I know, Bing Yao nodded, but he still had a conflicted expression on his face. Furthermore, there was one more thing that he didn't know if he should tell Shuer now. If Qingju and the rest found out, they would probably blame him again, right? He thought about it, and was having an intense battle in his heart. Lung Ruoxua saw how her senior brother was, and guessed that he had something to say. However, she did not rush him. Instead, she stood there and waited quietly. Chapter 2085. Azure Special Training 1. After waiting for a long time, Bing Yao was still in a dilemma. Lung Ruoxua couldn't take it anymore, so she asked directly, Senior brother, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't stammer, it's not like you. Shuer, looking at Lung Ruoxua, Bing Yao's expression turned awkward. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Senior brother, could it be that you have something you can't tell me? When Lung Ruoxua saw Bing Yao's state, her beautiful eyes started to look at him, making him feel uncomfortable. In the end, Bing Yao decided to make a decision. Shuer, I have junior brother's whereabouts. Junior brother? Lung Ruoxua was stunned when she heard these two words. She then reacted. The junior brother that senior brother was referring to should be her second senior brother, right? At this moment, Qingju, who had been paying attention to the situation, appeared again. He stared at Bing Yao nervously and asked, You know where Qingyang is? And Bing Yao nodded. His expression finally returned to normal after he spoke. Where is he? Quickly tell me. Seeing how slow Bing Yao was, Qingju said with a look of disappointment. He was so anxious and really wanted to beat Bing Yao up. However, since he had just recovered from a serious illness, he would let it go. In the Divine Master's estate, he fell into the hands of Wu Yan, and was locked up in the space that Master had opened up. I was injured the last time because I wanted to sneak in and save him. Who knew that I would be discovered by Wu Yan? Not only did I not manage to save Qingyang, but I also got injured. Bing Yao explained in a lonely voice. His handsome face was full of depression. You really have a pig's brain. Don't you know how strong Wuxia is? He actually dared to barge into the Divine Lord's estate. You should be grateful that you were able to escape. Otherwise, the Divine Realm will have another missing person. After hearing what Bing Yao said, Qingju did not pity him. Instead, he mocked him. I didn't expect her strength to improve so quickly. In the past, I could even fight her to a draw. Bing Yao said a little embarrassedly. His face was full of shame. Although he knew that Qingju was good at talking, it was a different feeling to experience it for himself. The past is the past. Besides, how long ago was that? If her strength didn't improve at all, she wouldn't have been able to sit on the Divine Master's position. Just those people who came wave after wave to kill her would be enough to make her suffer. Qingju continued to speak impolitely, and Bing Yao was left speechless by his words. He could not deny that Qingju was right. He had indeed been careless and underestimated his enemy. Thinking of this, his face suddenly burned, and he lowered his head like a child who had made a mistake. Lung Ruoxua could not bear to see this and said, Qingju, don't blame senior brother anymore. He's also anxious to save second senior brother. I can understand his feelings. She sounded very understanding. In fact, she was thinking the same thing. The two of them had been together for many years, and they had a deep relationship. Therefore, she could understand senior brother Bing Yao's desire to save second senior brother. If it were her, She would do the same thing to save her family who was captured and might even be suffering. At that time, no one could truly calm down. Hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, Bing Yao gave her a grateful look. Then, like a child who had done something wrong, he continued to lower his head. After telling Shuai about this, he felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. It felt great to have someone to share his burden. Bing Yao couldn't help but think. Even after knowing where second senior brother was, Lung Ruoxia did not make a decision immediately. She needed to discuss this with Uncle Long and the others. With that in mind, Lung Ruoxia had an idea and brought Bing Yao out of the bracelet. When he arrived at the garden, Uncle Long and the others happened to be there. When they saw Lung Ruoxia, the few of them heaved a sigh of relief. The demon who was chatting with them pointed at the seat beside him, indicating for Shuai to sit down. After sitting down, Lung Ruoxia prepared her words before telling everyone what Bing Yao had told her. They were all shocked. Uncle Long even grabbed Bing Yao's arm and asked, "Are you sure Qingyang is in the Divine Master's estate?" Previously, I disguised myself and sneaked into the Divine Master's estate. I even worked as a guard there for a period of time. This matter was also unintentionally heard by a trusted subordinate of Wu Xian. After that, I tried my best to become Wu Yan's follower and followed her into that space once. I saw Qingyang with my own eyes, but I didn't dare to act rashly at that time. Bing Yao explained with certainty. However, when he found the right time and entered the place again, he was discovered by the cautious and suspicious Wu Chun. After that, he was injured and ran away. Since we can confirm that Qingyang is there, we have to think of a way to save him as soon as possible. Aojia quickly said after hearing what Bing Yao said. Save my ass. Can you defeat Rhyme? Hearing Aojia's words, Song, who had been pretending to be asleep, opened his eyes unhappily and said coldly, Don't I still have you? You'll help us, right? Aojia was stunned by Song's words. He took a deep breath and said, I won't help you. Don't think that you're invincible just because you're a reverent god. If you want to die, go ahead, but don't drag my girl down with you. Azure said unhappily. In his heart, as long as Lung Ruoxia didn't send herself to her death, he didn't care about the lives of others. Uncle Long and the others were depressed when they heard Song's words. Woo, this vicious guy, must he be so direct? Furthermore, the person they were trying to save was Shuai's senior brother. Could it be that this senior wasn't even going to give face to Shuai? When evildoer heard Song's words, he raged. Damn it, Shuai is my girl, not yours. Oh really? This girl is my future master, so she's mine. Azure said matter-of-factly. Was this the main point? The crowd looked on helplessly as they argued over Lung Ruoxia's ownership. They were clearly talking about Qingyang. Couldn't these two be more serious? However, these two guys were obviously not someone they could control. The one who wanted to control them was Shuai. At the thought of this, everyone's gaze turned towards Lung Ruoxia. Lung Ruoxia coughed awkwardly before she said calmly, Stop arguing. I belong to myself. Shuai. Nio. Upon hearing this, the man and the beast stared at Lung Ruoxia with tears in their eyes. Their dark, diamond-like eyes were filled with grievance. Right now, the two of them looked like little puppies that had been abandoned by their owners. They were as pitiful as they could get. When everyone saw this, they were all confused. Did he have to be like this? Their little hearts trembled uncontrollably, and the way they looked at Lung Ruoxia turned resentful. It made Lung Ruoxia's hair stand on end, and her body was covered in a cold chill. Chapter 2086, Azure's Special Training 2 Cough Cough. After a few coughs, Lung Ruoxia changed the topic and said, Let's continue discussing second brother. Don't go off topic. Girl, I don't agree with you guys going to save her now. With your strength. You're just courting death. Azure bluntly pointed out. But now that we know where he is, we should save him as soon as possible. Otherwise, won't he have to suffer for another day? Lung Ruoxia, who was mercilessly attacked by Tsang, held on to her strong heart and started to reason with Tsang. That's right. That's right. We have to save him as soon as possible. Otherwise, if anything happens, we'll regret it. When Aojia heard this, he quickly agreed. However, Bingyao didn't dare to say anything. He was afraid that Song would use him as an example and beat everyone down. So he could only remain silent. However, his heart couldn't help but beat wildly. His black eyes were fixed on Song and Lung Ruoxue. He knew very well that Lung Ruoxue and Song were the key people who would decide whether they would go or not. Under the current circumstances, if Song did not agree for them to save Qin Yang, none of them would be able to leave this place. As for Lung Ruoxue, she was the only one who could convince Song and command him. However, what was out of Bing Yao's expectations was that Song was unusually persistent this time. Even if they talked until they broke their mouths, Song wouldn't change his mind. In reality, the reason why Azure was so stubborn was because it hoped that Lung Ruoxue could increase her strength as soon as possible. That way, it would be able to recognize her as its master as soon as possible. It didn't want to experience the incident of being excluded the last time again. Even though it had its own selfish motives, it never thought of itself as a selfless person. In fact, in its eyes, other than Lung Ruoxue, its future master, it didn't care about anyone else. As long as its future master lived well, what did other people's life and death have to do with it? However, after spending time with Lung Ruoxue, it was clear that it was unrealistic for it to completely ignore the people around its future master. Hence, from its perspective, it only needed to ensure that these people didn't die. After all, it wasn't their mother and couldn't clean up their mess all day long. In its eyes, these people were overestimating themselves. If they had the strength to fight with Wuxia, it would certainly not try to stop them. However, these people did not have that strength at all. Although they were reverent gods were almost like paper in front of the Divine Master, who could control the divine world. Unless they could be like Wuxia in the past, who had planned for a long time and succeeded in one strike. However, not everyone had Wuxian's luck. At least, they definitely did not have it now. In addition, it couldn't interfere with their rescue. It wasn't that it didn't give Neo face, but it couldn't always go against the Divine Master. Otherwise, it would also be punished by the laws of heaven and earth. Last time, it had already made an exception for Neo and angered the fog, but saving people was not comparable to that. In the fog's heart, those people were even more important than the petals on her body. After all, the petals were her own, and she could do whatever she wanted with them. However, those people were the result of her many years of persistence. If she appeared to save those people, the fog would probably go crazy. And if it were to have a conflict with a god master, the laws of the world would probably come looking for trouble again. Therefore, it must not show itself in this matter, nor must it let those people who overestimate their abilities take action. Thinking of this, he looked at the people who were trying to convince him. He sighed and said, "You can give up on this idea. I won't let you go to the Divine Master's residence, at least not now. Moreover, you don't have to worry about Qin Yang. Although he will suffer, his life will not be in danger. If Wu Yan wanted to kill him, he would not have been spared." Azure added, "Then when will it be done? Suffering is also very painful. Senior Tsang, how can you be so cold-blooded? I don't dare to ask for your help. Can't we go and save them ourselves?" Aojia said anxiously. He was speechless. He didn't expect that Song's stubbornness would make people want to scratch the wall. It was really too infuriating. He glanced at Aojia and said, "No. Besides, I'm just that cold-blooded. Haven't you heard of it? I can even leave that idiot Yu in the lurch, not to mention his disciple. His disciple has nothing to do with me?" Upon hearing this, Aojia was speechless. However, his flushed face proved that he was in a terrible mood at the moment. At this moment, seeing that the atmosphere was a little stiff, the evildoer had to say, "Don't make things difficult for Tsang. Now is indeed not a good time to save people." It was rare for him to stand on Tsang's side. "You also say so?" Upon hearing the demon's words, Aojia could not help but glare at him. The anger in his heart grew. "I'm just speaking the truth. Actually, unless there's no other choice, it's not convenient for me and Sangdu to take action." The demon thought for a moment before his pitch-black eyes turned towards Lung Ruoxue and continued, "Swear, you don't think I'm cold-blooded, do you?" "I want tea," Lung Ruoxue said with certainty. She believed that the evildoer would not lie to her. Furthermore, she knew that with his identity, it would not be good for him to do anything in the god world. Now that the evildoer had spoken out against it, she naturally had to agree with him unconditionally. Since evildoer and Songdu put it this way, senior brother, let's take our time to save second senior brother. Lung Ruoxue continued. AI. Alright. Bing Yao had no choice but to agree. In fact, he knew that he had no choice but to agree. Song would definitely not let him have the chance to leave. Then what should we do now? Uncle Long asked when he saw that the matter was almost settled. I've decided to give you guys special training. Azure said with a smile. Us? We're going to have special training too? Uncle Long asked in disbelief. Of course. Azure's smile was very evil, which gave them a bad feeling. How did Azure plan to torture them? Don't be afraid. I will be very gentle. Seeing everyone's surprised expression, Song comforted them. Gentle? Judging from Song Wenqing's imposing manner when he destroyed the Divine Lord's estate, there was no way they would believe in Song Wenqing. That guy would only be gentle to Shuer. As for them, it would be good enough if he didn't take the opportunity to kill them. Everyone thought to themselves. At the same time, their faces became more alert. Then, Uncle Long and the others found that the environment in front of them had changed. They had been moved to a foggy space. The space was very large, and there was only white fog in front of them. They couldn't see the situation in front of them at all. The aura here seemed familiar. What is this? Uncle Long's eyes widened. This place looked familiar. Hee. This is the space of the God Protection Tower. Welcome. Azure laughed. Why am I here? The master of the Ning family looked at Song in disbelief. Did the people in the special training that Song mentioned include him? He didn't want to go through special training. Chapter 2087. Azure's Special Training 3. You also need special training. Song's words made the Ning family's master recognize reality. At this time, First Elder couldn't help but say, Senior Song, I'm just a blacksmith, I don't need special training, right? A while ago, he had been staying in the bracelet, allowing Green Vessel to make things difficult for him. Now the jade was in Song's hands? He couldn't figure it out. When Song heard this, he only glanced at the Great Elder in disdain, then coldly said, So what if I'm a blacksmith? Didn't a blacksmith need combat power? With your strength, if you meet a strong person like me and I force you to do something you don't like, you won't even have the chance to resist. So just focus on your special training. After the special training, although your cultivation might not advance, your combat strength will definitely increase. Song's words were sincere. There weren't many people in the world who had such terrifying strength, right? Hearing Song's words, the Great Elder couldn't help but think to himself, but seeing the cute Totoro's serious expression, he knew that his objection was invalid. Therefore, he had to accept his fate. I hope I won't be played to death by Song. After the Great Elder and the master of the Ning family had failed, Cheng Wu, who had been holding back for a long time, finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He said carefully, Senior Azure, I don't need special training for the time being, right? I still have to manage the Yao clan building. If Uncle Long and I aren't here, the Yao clan will be without a leader. What if some trouble happens? After he finished speaking, Cheng Wu even put on a worried look. However, Uncle Long did not think highly of Cheng Wu's excuse. In fact, he was even gloating in his heart. It's better to share good fortune and misfortune together. As expected, after hearing Cheng Wu's words, Song still looked at him with disdain. Then he said indifferently, Don't worry, it won't delay your business. The time flow here is different from the outside. I've already accelerated the time here. Even if you stay here for thousands of years, it will only be a few hours outside. So, you just have to focus on your special training. We'll keep an eye on everything outside for you. These words immediately caused Cheng Wu's heart to be filled with tears. It seemed like he couldn't hide from it. Wu. Song waited for a moment, and when no one asked any more questions, he began to explain the rules of his special training. As long as you can defeat the opponents I've arranged for you, you'll have completed the special training mission. Azure pointed at Uncle Dragon. Ao Jia, and the master of the Ning family. Then it turned its gaze to the first elder and the others. As for you guys, you have to advance at least one level. Otherwise, you can't leave. If I can't break through in a long time, won't I have to stay here forever? Hearing Song's words, first elder confirmed. That's right. So you guys have to work hard and not embarrass me. You should know that I only allowed you to participate in the special training because of Nyo. After all, not everyone has the right to do so. Song said sunderily, his face was still filled with pride. He threw Lung Ruoxue a flirtatious look, causing the evildoer's heart to burn with anger. We won't embarrass you, old man. Uncle Long immediately said, a few black lines still hanging on his forehead. If he could, he really wanted to say that they didn't want to undergo any special training. He and the others were clearly forced to win the prize, but in the end, it was as if they were doing charity. This fact made him extremely depressed. That's good, Azure said with satisfaction. As for Uncle Long's thoughts, it automatically ignored them. However, it had made up its mind to give Uncle Long a special lesson during the special training. This was definitely revenge. Unfortunately, Uncle Long didn't notice it at all. Then, Song waved his claws and Lung Ruoxue, and the rest disappeared. Seeing that he was the only one left in the vast space, the demon immediately said in dissatisfaction. Why did you leave me alone? I'm telling you, I'm not going to stay with you. He was a little angry. Song actually took the opportunity to separate him and Shui. He really didn't want to live. Who needs your company? Azure's pitch-black eyes glared, and he said angrily. Then why did you leave me behind? The demon said unhappily. His entire body seemed to be spurting fire, and he was extremely vexed. Could it be that you want to participate in my special training? Hearing this, Cold laughed. In fact, it didn't arrange any special training for this damned man, so naturally, it couldn't send him away. However, it also couldn't leave him alone outside. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to have any peace. I don't need any special training. The demon said confidently. It's good that you know. Song said calmly, but he couldn't help but think, if the people of the Nine Nether prison knew that their master was receiving special training from it in the divine world, what kind of reaction would they have? Although it was very curious, it didn't have any thoughts of trying. Otherwise, the immortal realm would most likely be in great chaos. However, even though I don't want to participate in the special training, I will not allow you to separate me from Shui. The demon said again. This is special training, okay? I've lived for so long, but I've never heard of a family member who has to follow me for special training. Come on, don't tell me you haven't stopped drinking milk? Don't stick to my girl like that. When Azure heard evildoer's words, he couldn't help but roll his eyes and the disdain on his face deepened. That's not your girl. She's my girl. The demon strongly protested. Shoo, don't talk anymore, the special training is starting. Azure changed the topic and brought evildoer to his control room. In reality, it didn't have to be so kind to make this damn man so anxious, but it was also afraid that it would accidentally provoke this man. Without Nyo, it couldn't comfort this guy at all, so it could only unwillingly bring this annoying man along. Seeing Azure's performance, evildoer gave it a look of praise, as if saying, at least you know your place. Then, the demon's gaze was glued to a screen in the control room. It was displaying Lung Ruoxue's current situation. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue's body was in the pitch-black darkness of the night. She couldn't even see her fingers in front of her. Helplessly, she could only light up a small flame on her fingertip, instantly lighting up the area around her within a 5-meter radius. With a single glance, Lung Ruoxue suddenly realized that she was in a forest. In the forest, giant trees that were dozens of meters tall towered into the clouds, and the smallest one was more than 2 meters in diameter. The luxuriant branches and leaves blocked most of the sky, and there was not a single star in the faintly visible sky. The weather was very gloomy, as if a storm would fall at any time. Upon seeing the weather, Lung Ruoxue did not even think twice before she took out the house and placed it on the empty ground. However, after trying, she realized that she could not take out the house. What was going on? Her house was stored in the bracelet, so she could not take it out. She immediately contacted Qingju. but to her dismay, she could not contact him. This fact made her abnormally depressed. Could it be that she was going to sleep in the open in this gloomy forest tonight? This was definitely not good news for her. Then, she tried to take out other things. Lung Ruoxue was speechless as she looked at the white jade bottle in her hand. They were both things from the bracelet, so why could the pills be taken out, but not the house? Wasn't this clearly done on purpose? And the only person who would do such a thing was Song Buzwa. However, Lung Ruoxue also understood that Song was not planning to let her live comfortably. After realizing this fact, she could only helplessly take out her tent, start a fire, and prepare some food. Fortunately, there was no restriction on these things. Otherwise, she would be depressed to death. At this moment, Green Vessel was also quarreling with Song over this matter. Hearing the furious voice, Azure replied indifferently, "I'm doing this for Nyo. She can't rely on you too much. Otherwise, once she's used to it, if one day you're no longer useful to her, wouldn't she be at a loss? That's why I have to let her get used to the days without you from now on." Song's words were so natural, but only he knew that he also had selfish motives. Who asked artifact spirits to fight for favor? It couldn't let Neo rely on Green Vessel for everything, so it played a trick on Green Vessel. Hee. This was its territory. It was the master of its territory. No matter who you are, as long as you come in, you have to listen to it. It was a little proud. How could that idiot Qingju's intelligence be compared to its? You bastard. You're the one who's not useful. Green Vessel was even angrier when he heard Song's shameless words. However, he had to lower his head when he was under the roof. No matter how capable he was, he couldn't turn the tables on someone else's territory. After all, Song and he were both innate divine weapons. Song was also at his peak. He wasn't someone he could deal with now. This fact made Qingju extremely depressed. Sob. Why did he have to meet this shameless fellow now? He was really unwilling to accept this. However, the other party's strength was now overwhelming and completely suppressed him. Even if he wanted to help his sister, he had no way to do so. This made him a little crazy. He really wanted to beat up this damn Totoro. AI. Unfortunately, she could not do without the bracelet. Green Vessel was so depressed that he could only roar to express his dissatisfaction. However, Song did not care at all, and Lung Ruoxue was completely unaware. Chapter 2088. The Depressed Wolf. 1. Green Vessel roared a few times to show his dissatisfaction and anger before he disappeared unwillingly. At this time, Evildoer turned to look at Green and asked indifferently, "What the hell do you want to do?" "What am I doing?" "I'm doing this for their own good." When Song heard this, he said with an aggrieved expression. However, the evildoer didn't fall for this. "All right, stop acting pitiful in front of me. I won't be fooled." Evildoer held his forehead helplessly and exposed him. However, Cole didn't care and continued to use his watery black eyes to affectionately look at Evildoer. Evildoer couldn't help but shiver. Then he couldn't take it anymore and roared, "If you make that expression again, don't blame me for being impolite. This is my territory, my dear. How do you want to be impolite to me?" Song Qing glanced at Evildoer and asked with a smile. Her little face was filled with curiosity. Upon hearing this, the demon wilted. He hated Song in his heart, but there was nothing he could do about it. This kind of feeling was very uncomfortable. And he could also understand Green Vessel's depression more. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that he and Qingju would one day become a pair of brothers in the same boat. This situation was too amazing. At the thought of this, the evildoer glared at Azure fiercely. Then he turned his head away in anger and no longer wanted to bother with it. When Song saw this, he laughed extremely happily. The entire control room was empty, and his wild laughter echoed occasionally. This feeling was really great. Azure thought to himself that he could take advantage of them before they recovered their strength. Otherwise, once they recovered to their peak, he would probably not have such an opportunity. As he thought about this, Azure's gaze towards Evildoer deepened. Instantly, Evildoer became alert. At this moment, other than Lung Ruoxue, Uncle Long and the others were not having a good time either. Even though they were in different places, they were in the same place. The environment was also far worse than Lung Ruoshua's. Looking at the blood-red sky and the vast plain, Uncle Long and the others felt even more depressed. They could not be happy no matter what. Moreover, the place they were in was filled with blood and a cold aura, which made them feel particularly uncomfortable. Especially the Great Elder. When he saw the blood-red sky and the air filled with the smell of blood, he almost vomited. One should know that he was only a weapon refiner. The focus of his cultivation was naturally on refining weapons. He did not like fighting and killing, but now he was suddenly transported to such a place. How could he remain calm? After standing there stupidly for a while, his little heart was already trembling. His natural sense of danger also made him instinctively resistant to this place. Forcing himself to calm down, the Great Elder lit a fire to keep himself warm. The temperature here was unimaginably low. If he wasn't a cultivator and had the strength of a divine emperor, he would have been frozen into an ice sculpture long ago. After lighting the fire, he stayed by the fire without any appetite. After sitting for a while, he, like Lung Ruoshua, wanted to take out his house to rest but realized that he could not do so. Instantly, the Great Elder was so angry that his entire body was trembling. This was a scam. Wasn't this a scam? Do you still want to live? After scolding him, the Great Elder had no choice but to accept this fact. Because just now, Song's voice rang in his mind. That bad guy had told him directly that he couldn't take out the house from here. This fact made First Elder so depressed that he almost vomited blood. In the end, the Great Elder had no choice but to accept his fate. Fortunately, he had the habit of carrying a tent with him. Otherwise, he would have to sleep in the open in this damn place. After setting up the tent, First Elder had just entered the tent when he heard waves of wolf howls. Instantly, he was shocked and thought to himself, no way? This wasn't a forest, so why would there be wolves? As far as he knew, wolves generally didn't like the plains. There was no cover, so it was very inconvenient for them to do things, and it was easy for them to be discovered by the enemy. So what was this wolf howl about? Did I hear wrong? For a moment, the Great Elder doubted his own hearing, but as the sound of running got closer and closer, and the wolf howls that rose and fell, it was impossible for him to deceive himself. Thinking of this, he simply opened the tent and walked out. The moment he stepped out, he staggered and almost fell. Oh my God! What were these blood-red things that had merged with the sky and only left 2 pairs of green eyes? Did he have to be so scamming? The Great Elder confirmed it again and again, and finally confirmed that these creatures in front of him were really wolves. There were also countless wolves. Because the color of the wolves blended well with the sky, he could only see countless green eyes flashing in front of him. He even heard the wolves drooling. Although he had seen many wolf packs before, and Shue'er's bracelet even had a silver wolf pack, but they were all wolves, and the ones in front of him were definitely the kind that he could not bear to love. The smell of blood on these wolves rushed straight into the Chief Elder's nose, making him want to vomit frequently. However, he forcibly held it back. He did not dare to vomit in front of these inhumane wolves. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would be the next one to enter their stomachs. The First Elder supported his weak legs and forced himself to calm down. Then he put on a stiff smile and said, "May I know what business brings you here so late at night?" "What business?" "Haha, old man. Why do you sound so wishy-washy? What else could we be here for? Of course, we're here to kill." The leading wolf sneered when he heard First Elder's words. The Great Elder was actually quite embarrassed after listening to the Alpha's words. However, he was used to being polite to outsiders and foreign beasts. It was not in his nature to fight when he saw them. Therefore, he really could not put on a fierce and evil appearance. However, it was indeed a little ridiculous to be polite to these wolves that reeked of blood. However, a good habit could not be changed in a short time. The First Elder was depressed for a moment before he spoke again. "Everyone, if you're here to kill me, I can only regretfully tell you that it's not worth it to kill me." "How is it not worth it? Tell me about it." The Alpha's curiosity was piqued, and it asked with a pair of straight, cold green eyes. "First of all, my meat is too little, and you have too much. It's definitely not enough to split. Second, I'm a famous weapon forger. If you don't kill me, we can make a deal. I can refine weapons for you. That way, when you fight for territory with other beasts in the future, your chances of winning will be higher. What do you think? The great elder quickly said. He had thought of this on the spot, but he didn't know if the wolf in front of him would be interested in what he said. Chapter 2089. The Depressed Wolf 2. However, after hearing the first elder's words, the leader wolf pondered for a while and then laughed wildly. Ha ha ha. You humans are too cunning. Isn't making a deal with you humans the same as asking a tiger for its skin? Do you think you'll fall for it? I won't lie to you. The great elder promised sincerely. He really did not want to fight with these wolves. Although the strength of these wolves was not high, and the leader wolf was only at the divine king level, but there were too many of them. Even a reverent god would be depressed and go crazy if they were to fight one after another. Moreover, he was not good at fighting and did not like fighting. Therefore, if there were other ways to solve the problem at hand, he would not hesitate to choose other methods. But these wolves were obviously not that easy to talk to. What should he do? It would be great if Schwer was here. She would definitely have a way to deal with these wolves. At this moment, he missed Lung Ruoxua dearly. However, he could only think about it. Here, he would never have the chance to meet Lung Ruoxua. When the Alpha heard the Great Elder's guarantee, it still looked at the Great Elder with suspicion. The Great Elder's heart became even more depressed when he saw this. It seemed that he didn't keep his word in front of these wolves. But then the Great Elder was relieved. These wolves probably hadn't heard of him. He consoled himself. Otherwise, the head wolf's distrustful gaze would drive any normal person crazy. Moreover, why was he competing with an inexperienced wolf? In an instant, a feeling of boredom welled up in the Great Elder's heart. He quickly threw these thoughts out of his mind and started thinking of ways to deal with the wolf pack in front of him. However, after thinking about it for a long time, the Great Elder helplessly discovered that he was at his wit's end. Was he really going to let these wolves do whatever they wanted? No. He could not be so passive. In any case, he was a deity emperor and a person of status in the divine realm. If he were to lose without a fight, he wouldn't be able to survive in the divine realm after this news spread. The moment this thought appeared, the first elder's aura skyrocketed. An unprecedented fighting spirit was ignited in his heart, and soon, it burned into a raging fire. The chieftain wolf was confused for a moment, but it quickly regained its senses and looked at the Great Elder excitedly. It even let out a few loud howls. It looked like the old man in front of him was planning to fight. Hee. That's great. The chieftain wolf was so excited that it almost danced with joy. Panting heavily, it pounced and charged directly at the Great Elder. The Great Elder was shocked and hurriedly used the divine power in his body to block the attack of the Alpha Wolf. With a bang, the Alpha Wolf's attack missed, and it was instantly enraged. All the fur on its body stood up, and it seemed to be burning with flames. The moisture from its bloody mouth sprayed directly at the Great Elder's face, and the Great Elder quickly jumped back to avoid the unpleasant smell. This wolf had never brushed its teeth before. The Great Elder finished his appraisal. Yo, old man, I didn't expect you to have such skill. The Alpha Wolf ridiculed in a depressed manner when it saw the first elder jump away with extreme speed. I'm not just a man with 2 skills. The Great Elder obviously didn't care about the praise of the leader wolf. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. Don't think that just because you're not good at fighting, you really don't have any combat experience. In fact, he just didn't fight often. Oh really? Then I'll have to see for myself. The leader wolf said. Then he turned to his underlings and said, Children, surround this old man. In a while I'll make you some soup. It meant that they were going to take turns to fight. Yes. The deafening sound reverberated across the vast plain. And the depression in the Great Elder's heart could not be described with words. Needless to say, he was definitely the ingredient for the soup. However, he would not let these wolves have their way. He was the head elder of the Blacksmith Guild. How could he become a meal for these wolves? With this thought in mind, the Grand Elder began to attack. He took out a long sword. The sword was fiery red and exuded a scorching heat. It was obvious that this was a fire tribute sword. The heat on the sword was enough to roast any living creature. This sword was newly refined by him according to his own attributes. He had never used it before, and this sword was one of the tests that Qingju gave him. As for the heat on the sword, it was because after the sword was successfully refined, Schwerer had once infused a trace of her life flame into the sword. Therefore, this sword was not only his trump card, but also his greatest life-saving card. However, he did not expect that his trump card would be exposed so early. However, the situation in front of him did not allow him to think too much. After he injected divine power into the sword, he used it to coordinate with the sword technique. Countless sword cheese with sword flowers that flickered with starlight attacked the wolf pack that had already surrounded him. Hee. Schwerer was the one who taught him this. Arg. Ah. Ah. With a few screams, the wolves that were hit by the sword chi were instantly annihilated. The chieftain wolf's heart trembled when it saw this, but it still glared at the attacking great elder with a calm expression. Then it continued to encourage its subordinates. Don't be afraid of this old man, attack. Let's attack together. Charge. Kill this old man. Some of the wolves howled, and some howled in cooperation. In an instant, the momentum of the wolf pack shook the sky. The great elder narrowed his eyes and attacked even faster, more ruthlessly, and more accurately. Almost every time he struck, he would kill countless wolves, and the wolf pack began to panic and be at a loss. The alpha wolf didn't expect this weak-looking old man to have such a strong attack. Woo! What should it do? Its subordinates were dying in groups, which made it feel even more insecure. At the thought of this, it roared loudly and pounced toward the great elder again. The great elder, who was waving the sword in his hand, was having great time killing. Suddenly, he felt a murderous aura. Without thinking, he instinctively turned his hand. Then the alpha wolf was tragically cut in two by the sword chi. Its eyes were wide open in disbelief before it died. It died with grievances. With the death of the leader wolf, the wolf pack immediately fell into chaos. However, the great elder wasn't kind enough to let them go. He immediately ran away. Buzz. He swung his sword a few more times, and the fiery red sword flowers hit the wolves. Instantly, they were all turned into ashes. After the battle, the great elder was so tired that he sat on the ground and panted heavily. AI. This gang fight was really not something that humans should do. Fortunately, he had this sword. Otherwise, he might have been the one to die today. Even if he wasn't he would have been seriously injured. The great elder sighed and sat on the ground, too lazy to get up. Then, he couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. He didn't know what the hell this place was. It was only the first day, and he had already fought with the wolves. He didn't know what would appear later. Chapter 2090. The Depressed Wolf 3. Senior Tsang is really too much of a cheat. Although he was hiding his resentment, he only dared to think about it in his heart, and did not dare to show it. After sitting enough on the ground, he went back into the tent to rest. Otherwise, if he encountered any more beast groups, wouldn't he be in for a tragedy? The great elder didn't rest well that night, because he still had to keep a trace of his divine sense out to pay attention to the movements outside. He finally sneaked out of the tent until dawn. The daytime here was only a little better than when he had first come in. The sky was still blood red, but it was much brighter and the smell of blood was lighter. From this, he was sure that it was nighttime when he first came here. But he still didn't like the daytime here. Moreover, he also believed that as long as it was a normal person, no one would like it here. After tidying up the tent and having a simple meal, the great elder prepared to leave. Not long after he left, the space there twisted, and then blood-red figures appeared. If the great elder was here, he would definitely find that these people were the wolves he had killed before. Yes, the dead wolves were resurrected. It could also be said that they would never truly die, because they did not really exist. Although they looked no different from the wolf clan with flesh and blood, they were all illusions created by Tsang. As soon as these wolves were resurrected, they all gathered around the alpha wolf with lingering fear on their faces. Old ancestor, that human is so terrifying. Hearing the younger wolf, he said in a baby voice, "What are you afraid of? We won't really die." The chieftain wolf consoled him. In fact, it was quite depressed. It didn't expect that it would be at a disadvantage in the first battle. To think that it had boasted in front of its master that it would definitely not let the humans who entered this place have an easy time. Sob. It was too ashamed to see its master. But, will master blame us for being useless? The wolf cub asked worriedly. I want that human strength is already above us. The alpha wolf said with certainty. In fact, it was not sure in its heart, but in front of its subordinates. It could only bite the bullet and say so. But after the wolf cub heard this, it was not completely at ease. Moreover, there was one thing that it did not say, and that was that they had a lot of people. However, seeing that everyone was in low spirits, it definitely couldn't say this out loud. The alpha wolf also noticed this. It cleared its throat and said in a serious tone, My children, although we've had a bad start, you don't have to be discouraged. That old man is still too strong for us. Next time, we'll find someone with lower strength to practice with. I believe that with our wheel battle, any human will be weak in front of us. The alpha wolf's purpose was to boost its momentum, but the wolves who heard it were obviously disinterested. It could be seen that they had been hit hard. Seeing this, the leader wolf was extremely anxious. The wolf pack's momentum was weak. What should he do? Wasn't this the will of the heavens? Sob. Its heart was filled with tears. After a long time, My children, the alpha wolf spoke again. I just used my divine sense to investigate, and there just so happens to be a woman in the forest not far from us. That woman only has the strength of a god king, and is definitely someone we can deal with. Everyone, let's go. Following its howl, the pack of wolves howled as well. Needless to say, its target this time was Lung Ruoxia. As for Lung Ruoxia, who was in the forest, she had no idea that she had been targeted by a pack of wolves that had suffered a great blow. However, even if she knew, she would not care. At this moment, Lung Ruoxia had just come out of her tent. It had suddenly rained heavily last night. Hence, she was just like First Elder, not having a good rest. However, as a cultivator, sleep was not the most important thing. So, after taking a few medicinal pills to replenish her shun power and physical strength, she became refreshed and radiant again. Then, she prepared to make something to eat. Although cultivators didn't need to eat every day, she was an ordinary human who cultivated up to this stage. Naturally, she still maintained the habit of eating 3 meals. More importantly to her, food wasn't for filling her stomach, but for enjoyment. So no matter where she was, she didn't want to torture her stomach. After taking out a small pot, she also took out some rice and seafood to cook a delicious seafood congee. Not long after, the fragrance of the congee wafted through the entire forest. At the same time, the alpha wolf, who was leading a large group of people to the forest, also anxiously led the group to run. It was very afraid that the woman would leave. More importantly, the unknown fragrance in the air always made it drool involuntarily. After Lung Ruoxia had finished cooking the steaming hot porridge, she had already started eating. By the time the alpha wolf and the wolf pack arrived, the pot was already empty, but the fragrance in the air was still thick and had not dissipated. Seeing this, the alpha wolf sniffed the air and narrowed its sinister eyes. It roared, Human, what good stuff are you eating? Hurry up and hand it over. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but raise her head and cast a disdainful glance at the alpha, who was glaring at her. She smiled faintly and said, Are you trying to rob me? In fact, before she finished the porridge, she had already noticed these wolves. However, she sensed that these wolves were not very strong, so she did not take it to heart. But now, after hearing the words of the leader wolf, she could not help but laugh to herself. Although she didn't know where this place was, since it was Azure who had sent them here, the creatures here should have been arranged by Azure to accompany them for special training. In that case, she naturally didn't need to please these wolf pups. Moreover, she wanted to see how far Azure's special training would go. Therefore, from the beginning, her tone was not very good. She wanted to anger them. When the alpha heard Lung Ruoxia's words, it was indeed fooled. It roared, That's right, we're here to rob you. Hurry up and hand over all your good stuff. What if I don't? Lung Ruoxia's beautiful face was filled with curiosity as she asked, "If you don't hand it over, you'll die." The alpha wolf howled in an imposing manner, and the rest of the pack followed suit. Lung Ruoxia's smile became even more radiant. "Dead. It won't be easy to kill me," Lung Ruoxia said calmly. Humans. You are too confident. Don't you see that I have so many subordinates?" The chieftain wolf pulled its neck and howled as a reminder. However, it couldn't help but think, "I couldn't do anything to that old man, but I can't deal with a weak woman like you?" If it couldn't even defeat a woman, it didn't need to stay here anymore. Therefore, the alpha had already made up its mind to teach this smiling woman a lesson. However, while the wish was beautiful, reality was cruel. Clearly, the alpha had chosen the wrong opponent again. Others might not be able to do anything in a group battle, but Lung Ruoxia was most skilled and loved group battles. Furthermore, it was the type where the more enemies the better. As long as her meteor shower was used in conjunction with her natal flames, no matter how many enemies there were, they would be burned to ashes. Furthermore, these wolves were weak wolf tribe members that even the first elder could handle. Naturally, Lung Ruoxia did not place them in her eyes. After a long time, Lung Ruoxia advised him with good intentions. "You think you can kill me just because you have the numbers? Didn't anyone tell you that numbers don't determine everything? You'll know once you try." The chieftain wolf was unwilling to be frightened and braced itself to say. In reality, it was deceiving itself and not admitting that Lung Ruoxia's words were right. More importantly, it couldn't show its cowardice in front of its subordinates. Otherwise, how could it convince the public in the future? "Since you want to try, then I'll fulfill your wish." Lung Ruoxia could only say this when she saw that her persuasion was ineffective. After saying that, she took out her weapon, which was also a sword. It was an extremely sharp sword that exuded a biting cold air. The coldness emitted from the sword made the weak wolves start to shiver. When the alpha wolf saw the sword, its heart skipped a beat. An ominous feeling welled up in its heart. It couldn't be that unlucky, right? Could it be that the two humans he found in succession were tough? This thought made the leader wolf depressed, but the arrow was already on the bow and had to be fired. It couldn't let its subordinates down either. Therefore, after letting out a loud roar to create some pressure on Lung Ruoxia, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards Lung Ruoxia. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxia didn't even try to dodge. She immediately sent a sword light up to the head of the pack, entangling it. The chieftain wolf was extremely annoyed by the fight. In the blink of an eye, its body was covered in wounds. However, there was no blood flowing out of its body. Lung Ruoxia's beautiful eyes flickered when she saw this. She understood what was going on. Following that, she did not hold back anymore. A meteor shower shot out like thousands of stars shining with a faint light, flying towards the wolf pack from all directions. In an instant, the wolf pack was completely annihilated. They did not even have the time to cry out in pain before they died again. Then death befell the chieftain wolf. This time, it still died with its eyes wide open. After exterminating the wolf pack, Lung Ruoxia patted the dust off her hands and turned around to pack her things before leaving. As soon as she left, the wolf pack resurrected on the spot. However, this time, the wolves hugged each other and cried without saying anything. The leader wolf was so depressed that it wanted to commit suicide. But even if it committed suicide, it wouldn't die. Chapter 2091. My dear, just kill me one. More importantly, it could not understand why a woman was so difficult to deal with. Weren't women supposed to be very weak? That was a woman. Moreover, the swordsmanship that the woman used was even more powerful than the old man's. Why was that? The humans who looked very, very weak turned out to be very tough. This made the alpha wolf strongly doubt its own judgment. If a woman was so difficult to deal with, could they deal with the others here? Ooh, master. Why did you make me so weak? Powerful. I want to be strong. I don't want to be unable to deal with a woman. This hurts my self-esteem too much. I don't have the face to see the beast. The chieftain wolf was wailing and howling in its heart. The other wolves were also remorseful and sad. After these two battles, their confidence had been completely shattered into powder. which could not be picked up again. The evildoer who saw this scene through the screen turned to look at Song and said indifferently, "This is the special training you arranged for them? Those wolves obviously don't have enough confidence." Hehe. This was just the beginning. One couldn't become a fatty in one bite. Of course, things had to be done bit by bit. They had to let them have a process of adapting. If their opponents were strong from the beginning, they would be the ones without confidence. Moreover, if the opponents are weak in the beginning, they will let their guard down. When they are completely relaxed, the little guys I arranged will be able to play their real role. Just wait and watch the show. When Azure heard Evildoer's words, he laughed nonchalantly. Are you sure? Evildoer was suspicious of Song's words, and he believed that Song was just trying to trick him. Of course, Song was full of confidence. At the same time, the pack of wolves that were hugging each other and crying suddenly felt a warm flow in their bodies. Then, a white light completely enveloped them. When the white light disappeared, what welcomed them was the excited howls and howls of the pack of wolves. Seeing this, the monster in the control room frowned but didn't say anything. Instead, his eyes were still fixed on the light screen. First Elder and Lung Ruoxua encountered wolves, while Ao Jie encountered bees. The bees were huge, each about half a meter in size. They were poisonous and anyone who came into contact with them would be poisoned immediately. Although Ao Jie had already consumed the antidote given by Lung Ruoxua, he was still bitten by one of the bees. It was on his face, and this fact made him extremely angry. His handsome face was swollen like a pig's head. However, it was fortunate that no one else saw it. Otherwise, he would have been depressed to death. But now his face was in pain and itchiness. He was still feeling very uncomfortable. Even though the detoxification pill that Lung Ruoxua gave him could prevent him from being bitten by mosquitoes, it could not detoxify the poison of these poisonous bees. This made him feel even more depressed. At this moment, Ao Jie was sitting on the ground and sighing. Suddenly, he felt a dangerous aura and immediately became alert. At this time, a mocking voice sounded in his ear. "Yo, there's a pig here." Although Ao Jie knew that the person was talking about him, he did not want to take the person's words seriously. Hence, he only increased his vigilance and did not reply. When the voice saw that Ao Jie was ignoring him, it directly appeared in front of Ao Jie and continued to provoke him. "Pig head. I'm talking to you. Why are you acting dumb?" The person who spoke was the leader of the pack of wolves that Lung Ruoxua and First Elder had encountered earlier. He was also the wolf that had suffered the most. At that moment, it stood in front of Ao Jie arrogantly and confidently, provoking him continuously. Its purpose was also obvious. It wanted to infuriate the pig head in front of it and make it kill it. This way it could advance again. Yes, after being killed by the First Elder and Lung Ruoxua in succession, the entire wolf pack had advanced in rank. Its current strength had also reached the level of a divine emperor. However, this was still not enough for it. Hence, it had specially looked for one of the most powerful people here, Ao Jie. However, Ao Jie was currently depressed and clearly did not want to bother with it. How could this be? It couldn't come here for nothing, so it had to succeed no matter what. At the thought of this, the alpha wolf attacked without saying anything. Ao Jie's movements were also unusually fast. He raised his hand to block and then attacked again. The alpha wolf was cut into two again. However, it died very happily this time. After the leader wolf died, the pack of wolves appeared. Seeing this, Ao Jie squinted his eyes and began to kill. It was a good opportunity for him to vent his anger on the wolves. These wolves were not strong enough in Ao Jie's eyes. After a few attacks, the wolf pack was completely annihilated. Then, Ao Jie patted his butt and left the place without taking a single cloud with him. After Ao Jie left, the wolves naturally revived. However, they hugged each other and cried. "Ooh, why haven't they advanced this time? Was there not enough time?" The chieftain wolf couldn't help but think, how about this? Wait a minute? With this thought in mind, the alpha wolf appeased the wolf pack and asked them to wait. However, after waiting for 2 days, the feeling of advancing did not appear on their bodies. This time, they were depressed again. How did this happen? The leader wolf couldn't understand. This shouldn't be the case. Didn't they die again? Or was it not enough to die once? At the thought of this, the alpha decided to continue and die. After that, it went to Uncle Long. The first thing he said when he saw Uncle Long was, "Dear, kill me." Uncle Long frowned and looked at the wolf, who was obviously not in his right mind. He ignored him. However, the wolf didn't give up. Instead, it continued to approach Uncle Long, and even offered its head to Uncle Long. "Dear, kill me. I'm still waiting." Hearing this, Uncle Long's face darkened. Then he shouted coldly, "Get lost. Don't let me see you again." Uncle Long was both angry and helpless. He had only been here for a few days. How did she encounter a mental illness? This was the special training that Cold gave them? Was he playing with them? For the first time, Uncle Long began to doubt Azure's authority. However, a certain wolf wasn't that easy to deal with. Besides, it would be embarrassing to leave just because you asked it to. So the wolf was determined to play dirty and shamelessly pestered Uncle Dragon. Uncle Dragon was annoyed by it and had to kill it. The wolf died happily. Then it was naturally the wolves' turn. After killing these wolves, Uncle Long felt nothing but depression. Moreover, he was also afraid of encountering a mental patient like the wolf. Therefore, after killing the wolf as it wished, Uncle Long quickly left. Chapter 2092. My dear, kill me. 2. As soon as Uncle Long left, the wolf pack immediately resurrected. He didn't advance again. After the leader wolf howled, the pack of wolves howled as well. After howling for a long time, the leader wolf once again roused its spirit and began to lecture the other wolves. "Children, don't be discouraged. We must continue to die until the end. I don't believe that we can't advance after dying once at the hands of these people." The leader wolf's words roused the hearts of the wolves. After the other wolves heard it, their faces turned red and their emotions were stirred up. They loudly echoed their ancestor. "Die. We must die. Let those humans kill us." "Good. Children, let's go. Go find those humans and die." The leader wolf looked at its subordinate with admiration and roared. After the roar, the alpha wolf valiantly and heroically led the wolf pack on a journey to their deaths. He would not stop until he died. Just like that, after Uncle Long, the Ning family head, Cheng Wu, and the rest also encountered the wolf pack that came to die. At first, when they saw this large pack of wolves, their hearts trembled a little. However, after hearing a certain wolf's declaration of death, they immediately classified these wolves as mentally abnormal and ignored them. However, even though they ignored the wolf insisted on getting close to them. It even shamelessly walked in front of them. In the end, the master of the Ning family, Cheng Wu, and the others had no choice but to kill the wolf and his wolf pack like Uncle Long. After several deaths, a certain wolf and its pack finally advanced as they wished. This time, they cried tears of joy and cried even more miserably. It really wasn't easy. Their path of advancement could definitely be called the blood and tears of their beast lives. However, a certain wolf, who was already a reverent god-level cultivator, felt that it was all worth it. Moreover, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Now that it was a reverent god and the wolf pack's strength had increased greatly, it did not believe that it could not defeat those humans this time. The first thing he did after breaking through was to take revenge. This was also a disgrace to the entire wolf tribe. The target it had chosen was the first elder who had killed them. The great elder, who thought he was unlucky, saw the wolves in front of him again, and thought he was seeing things. These wolves in front of him were similar to the wolves he had met before, but the strength of the wolves in front of him was more than one level higher. Therefore, he was not sure if they were the same wolves as before, but it must be related to them. Looking at the menacing wolves and their pack, the great elder knew that these wolves were here for revenge. However, he still remained calm when he faced these wolves. When the wolf saw that the old man in front of him didn't have much of a reaction after seeing him, he suddenly felt that his pride was insulted. He bared his teeth and roared, "Old man, you're dead this time." It's really you. Aren't you all dead?" As soon as he heard this arrogant tone and voice, the first elder knew that these were the wolves he had encountered before. It seemed that the first thing these wolves did after their strength increased was to seek revenge. However, what was going on with their resurrection? The great elder was bewildered. Humph. How could we die? Human, this is our territory. A certain wolf said proudly. Then it glanced at the first elder with contempt and continued with its head held high. Old man, you're the one who's going to die. Then let's try. The great elder was not very confident, and his tone was somewhat hesitant. Damn, old man, what do you mean by try? A certain wolf said angrily, feeling more and more displeased with this old man. This old man was clearly looking down on it. Let's see who will die. The great elder added. Then he looked at a certain wolf as if he was looking at an idiot. His eyes were red as he said, You don't even understand this? A certain wolf's anger shot to the top of his head when he saw these few big words. Then let's try it. A certain wolf howled and pounced at the great elder. Seeing this, the great elder directly jumped to the side of the open space and dodged a certain wolf's first attack. After the first attack failed, the wolf's anger grew even more. However, it still said stubbornly, Old man, you've got some skills. You've said this before. The first elder's mouth twitched as he warned. Damn it. Can't you just say what you've already said? A certain wolf roared angrily, wishing he could tear the hateful old man in front of him into pieces. This old man was too good at angering wolves, wasn't he? I can. You can say it as many times as you want. The first elder replied perfunctorily, then took out his killer sword. The moment the wolf saw the long sword that was emitting a scorching aura, its heart trembled involuntarily. The power of the sword still lingered in its heart. This fact made it extremely sad and angry. You can't use this sword. The wolf made an unreasonable request, because it was not the only one. When his subordinates saw the sword, they trembled even more violently than he did. Fuck. Their strength was no longer what it was in the past, alright? A certain wolf was so depressed that it wanted to cry, but it could not control its instinctive reaction. You think you can't just because you say so? Who do you think you are? The great elder looked at a certain wolf with disdain, and said unhappily, If he didn't use this sword, where would he get the confidence to win against them? One had to know that the flames attached to the sword were the nemesis of all humans and beasts. At least, that was what he thought. This king is the overlord of this place. Hearing the first elder's provocation, a certain wolf proudly announced, You? I'm sorry, I really couldn't tell. The great elder's light words made a certain wolf, who had already fused with the sky, so angry that its whole body burst into flames, and its desire to tear the great elder to pieces became even stronger. Old man, I'll make you regret this. A certain wolf said. Then, the great elder was greeted by a certain wolf's storm of attacks. The great elder was fighting with a certain wolf, and he was surrounded by countless wolves, all of them staring at him covetously. This made him feel very pressured, but he did not show it on his face. He looked extremely calm, but in fact he was extremely nervous. However, fortunately, with the deterrence of this sword, other than the alpha wolf, the other wolves did not dare to take advantage of the situation. This also made him feel a little more at ease. At least he would not be attacked from the front and back. However, he couldn't take it either. Thinking about the huge number of wolves, the great elder became depressed. After a certain wolf had died several times and advanced, its strength was indeed different from the past. The great elder had some difficulty dealing with it. However, looking at the wolf's ferocious appearance, he knew that this wolf was not joking with him. It really had the intention to kill him. Although the great elder knew that everything here was arranged by Tsang, he wasn't sure if they would die. After all, many big families didn't care about the death of their clansmen when they arranged the inhuman training. They only wanted the best of the best, the true elites of the family. Therefore, the great elder didn't dare to take it lightly. Instead, he tried his best to deal with the wolf and find the right time to strike. Chapter 2093. Dear, just kill me. 3. Finally, the great elder found an opening and poured all his divine power into the sword. Then he attacked a certain wolf. The wolf that was hit by the divine sword chi widened its eyes in disbelief. It looked at the wounds on its body and the burning pain in its body. Finally, it was swallowed by the flames that suddenly burst out of its body. Before it died, it still died with its eyes wide open. Seeing that their ancestor had been killed, the wolves were collectively dumbfounded. Ooh, how could this be? Their strength had clearly increased, so why did they still die in the end? This didn't make sense. The wolves were really unwilling, but the Great Elder didn't give them any time to sigh. After a few sword chi swept over, the wolves also died with their eyes wide open. After another fierce battle, the Chief Elder was already drenched in sweat after exterminating the wolf pack. He took a few pills in succession before his divine power and physical strength recovered. Then he immediately left, in case a certain wolf and its wolf pack came back to life and caused trouble for him. The moment First Elder left, Lung Ruoxua arrived. However, the scenery that Lung Ruoxua saw was different from the First Elder and the rest. In Lung Ruoxia's eyes, the sky was a little dark, but it was still acceptable. It was just that such weather would make one feel depressed, and their mood would be affected. After finding a clean and flat place to sit down, Lung Ruoxua started a fire to cook. She had decided to spend the night out in the open. After eating and setting up the tent, Lung Ruoxua scattered some colorless and odorless powder around the tent. Then she entered the tent with a peace of mind. Not long after she entered the tent, the space around her twisted. The wolf pack was resurrected. A certain wolf looked at the tent in front of him and felt depressed. Woo! Why did he meet this woman who looked weak, but was actually a fierce tigress again? Out of all these people, the person it was most afraid of and did not want to meet the most was Lung Ruoxua. This was because the terrifying woman's flames had caused it to tremble in fear even now. As for its children, after seeing that woman, they did not want to be resurrected. AI. Pressure. The pressure was like a mountain. Even if they could still live after death, they didn't want to die in such an aggrieved manner. A certain wolf was so depressed that he wanted to start howling. The other wolves wanted to howl as well, but they were afraid of waking Lung Ruoxua up. Hence, they could only suppress their desire to vent their anger. They held it in with all their might. Every wolf's face turned green from holding it in. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Finally, a certain wolf could not bear it any longer. He gave his children a look to retreat. Only then did the other wolves dare to leave this terrifying place carefully. Who knew that after just 2 steps, the wolves fell to the ground one after another, unconscious. What's wrong? Get up now, it's not the time to sleep. A certain wolf saw his own child fall and turned pale with fright. It called out softly, but the unconscious wolf did not give it any response. You guys! The wolf said 2 more words before falling to the ground and losing consciousness. The next morning, Lung Ruoxua, who had rested for the night, walked out of her tent feeling refreshed. She saw that she had gained a lot from the previous night. In addition to some poisonous insects, wolves were also drugged by her. Moreover, those wolves looked quite familiar. However, their strength was much stronger than what she had seen before. Lung Ruoxua kicked a certain wolf with the tip of her foot. Then, she threw a large water ball on the wolf's body, and the wolf slowly woke up. When he saw Lung Ruoxua, a certain wolf's heart skipped a beat. It was this female devil. It didn't do anything this time. The demon wouldn't want to kill it, would it? Have we met before? Lung Ruoxua caught a glimpse of a certain wolf's fear, and asked indifferently. No. I've never seen him before. A certain wolf refused to admit that it had seen Lung Ruoxua before, but its little heart was trembling nonstop. Woo. Its legs had gone soft. Since you've never seen it before, why are you shaking? Lung Ruoxua asked, feigning curiosity. She could only react accordingly to a fellow who did not speak the truth. I'm cold. It's too cold here. A certain wolf was quick-witted and quickly said, Oh, then what are you doing here? Are you here to kill me? Lung Ruoxua smiled and asked, No, I am taking the children for a walk. I never thought of killing you. A certain wolf wanted to cry but had no tears. It did not understand why this woman who only seemed to have the strength of a divine king would give it such great pressure that it was afraid of dying. And this had absolutely nothing to do with resurrection. This was a natural instinct. A walk. Come here? Lung Ruoxia's beautiful face was filled with suspicion. Clearly, she did not believe the wolf's words. When the wolf saw this, it grinned and replied in a low voice, "Yes, the weather here is good. It's very suitable for a walk." "Oh really? How come I didn't find this place suitable for a walk?" Suddenly, Lung Ruoxia shouted in anger. The aura around her rose sharply, causing a certain wolf to shiver in fear. His little heart trembled even more. "That's because we wolves like this place," a certain wolf said carefully. From time to time, it would sneak a glance at Lung Ruoxia from the corner of its eye. It was wailing in its heart. "Ooh, why is this demon so temperamental?" He was so angry that he didn't even say anything in advance. He was not prepared and almost knelt down. He didn't kneel because his legs were soft and he couldn't move. "Oh really? By the way, you guys won't die, right?" Lung Ruoxia changed the topic and asked about what she had suspected before. When a certain wolf heard this, he was dumbfounded. Why didn't this demon play by the rules? Until now, it still didn't know what the woman meant. It was a little confused. However, when a certain wolf heard this, he still said very cautiously, "I'm not too sure." It didn't dare to tell this woman that it would come back to life even if it died. Otherwise, if this evil demon became addicted to killing it, wouldn't it be looking for trouble for itself? Lung Ruoxia, on the other hand, replied nonchalantly, "Since you don't know either, then let me try." With that, Lung Ruoxia immediately took out her sword. However, a certain wolf had only said 2 words, "No." She then released a small flame, and the unconscious poisonous insects and wolves were set on fire. These poor guys were swallowed by the hot flame just like that. After she was done, Lung Ruoxia was not in a hurry to leave. She was waiting for the wolves to resurrect to prove her guess. The wolves that could have resurrected, upon seeing Lung Ruoxia standing guard at the same spot, did not dare to resurrect anymore. Unfortunately, there was a time limit to their resurrection. If they refused to be resurrected, they would never be able to live again. As such, no matter how unwilling the wolf pack was, they could only summon up their courage and resurrect in front of Lung Ruoxia. When Lung Ruoxia saw the wolf pack that had appeared in front of her in perfect condition, she smiled and said, "It's really you. You dared to lie to me before? You're quite bold." "No, I wouldn't dare to lie to you. That was just a white lie," a certain wolf said stubbornly, refusing to admit that he had previously lied to Lung Ruoxia. When Lung Ruoxia heard this, she was neither angry nor annoyed. Instead, she continued to ask with a smile, "All right. Even if you're telling a white lie, tell me now, why did your strength suddenly become reverent God? Isn't this advancement speed a little too fast? I've died too many times, so I advanced. However, I can't advance even if I die again in the future. I've reached my limit, so I don't want to die anymore. Will let me go. Killing me will only dirty your hands." The wolf begged. It had begged to die in order to advance, but death was very painful. After being unable to advance, it naturally did not want to experience that indescribable pain. That was really worse than death. "How many times did you die before you became a reverent god?" Lung Ruoxia asked in surprise. She had not expected this to be the reason for a certain wolf's breakthrough. "Yes, I've been begging for death so much that many people think I'm mentally ill. So, please take pity on me and don't kill me. It's too painful to die." A certain wolf was playing the emotional card. Although he didn't know if this female demon would be soft-hearted, it was always right to lower his stance. Pfft. Hearing a certain wolf's complaint, Lung Ruoxia could not help but laugh. Wouldn't he be treated as a lunatic? However, wasn't this wolf leader a little too unreliable? In order to advance, he actually asked for death. Needless to say, the wolf was definitely seeking death from Uncle Long and the others. After all, this wolf was no match for Uncle Long and the others. Besides, there was no one else here. "You're quite a weirdo." Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but ask after she was done laughing. "Thank you for the compliment. I'm shy," a certain wolf said in embarrassment, white smoke rising from his body. Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxia's face was filled with black lines. She was speechless. This wolf? Seriously? This was the first time she had seen embarrassment smoke from its body. How embarrassed was it? At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxua looked deeply at a certain wolf who had his head lowered in embarrassment. Then she left without looking back. Old ancestor, she's gone. One of the wolves reminded Lung Ruoxua, as they watched her leave. He left. A certain wolf could not believe it and raised its head abruptly. It only believed the truth when it saw that Lung Ruoxua was no longer in front of it. However, why did that woman suddenly leave? It really couldn't understand. However, Lung Ruoxua's departure still allowed the wolf to heave a sigh of relief. At least they were safe. Then a certain wolf howled happily, and the other wolves immediately echoed. My children, let's go find our next opponent. This time, we must be humiliated. Without Lung Ruoxua, a certain wolf would be like a monkey who claimed to be king. The wolves' morale was greatly boosted, and they followed their ancestor to find trouble with the others. Chapter 2094, Endless Battle 1. However, this pack of wolves was not very lucky. In addition, they had an out-of-line leader. Therefore, after Lung Ruoxua, they found Uncle Long, Audiobook, and the Ning family's master. They were still abused. The three of them did not show any mercy to the wolf that was obviously mentally unstable. They even started killing it without saying a word when they saw it. After all, this was its request. After dying one after another, the alpha wolf was so depressed that it cried again. These humans were really barbaric, brutal, and unreasonable. He actually killed as he pleased without showing any mercy. What made him vomit blood was that sometimes, he was killed before he could even prepare. This fact made him feel extremely aggrieved. When the pack of wolves resurrected for the nth time and found Uncle Dragon, Audiobook, and the master of the Ning family, the leader wolf once asked, "Why are you guys so disloyal? You didn't even give me a chance to speak before you killed me?" Uncle Long and the other two gave it a reply. "Didn't you strongly request this?" In fact, they were afraid that the wolf was talking nonsense about asking for death, so they would kill it as soon as they saw it. Moreover, although this wolf had already advanced to the reverent god level, it obviously did not have the combat power of a reverent god level. It was timid and afraid of trouble, so they were not willing to hold back. After countless failures, a certain wolf finally gave up on looking for trouble with Uncle Long and the other two. Instead, he found a corner with no one around and lay on the ground, crying bitterly. Looking at a certain wolf's shoulders convulsing, the other wolves standing not far behind him revealed a helpless expression. Poor old ancestor. They had thought that they could finally take revenge, but who knew that the three of them were so strong that they still could not defeat them. Moreover, in order to fight for their dignity, their ancestor had been constantly looking for trouble with the three of them. This cycle had repeated itself, and they were also tormented. However, looking at their ancestor's heartbroken appearance, the wolves were too embarrassed to say anything unpleasant. Therefore, they could only stand behind him to comfort and support him silently. By the time a certain wolf finished crying, 3 days had already passed. A certain wolf, who had finally pulled himself together, wiped his tears, but he still looked at his children with a choked voice and roared, "My children! Although we can't beat those perverts, there are a few people here who aren't very strong. Let's go and take revenge on them." Its words were not very confident, and after the wolves heard it, they all looked at their old ancestor in confusion, not knowing who the few people it was referring to. Among the humans here, there were indeed a few who were not very powerful. Like the women they had met before, they were only at the level of a divine king. However, with Lung Ruoxua's example, they did not dare to look down on any human. However, their old ancestor seemed to be a little depressed. At the thought of this, a wolf cub couldn't help but say, "Old ancestor, I discovered that these people's strength can't be measured by levels at all. Otherwise, would definitely be at a disadvantage." It had to be said that this little wolf was quite intelligent. However, a certain wolf had a character of not turning back until hitting a wall. Therefore, after hearing the little wolf's words, he said very indifferently, "Don't be scared by that woman. There aren't many people like her in this world. Besides, we're not afraid of her because of her strength. but because of her flames. So don't scare yourself. I don't believe that everyone here has her flames. What the ancestor said makes sense. Let's go and try. The little wolf said unwillingly after hearing what his ancestor had said. That's more like it. The wolf was very satisfied with the little wolf's tactfulness. Then, it led its team to find the human that it thought was easy to deal with. Needless to say, the weak humans in his mind were naturally Cheng Wu's group. When they reappeared in front of Cheng Wu, he was only slightly surprised and said, "Are you here to die again? Kiss." The tone of his words was exactly like that of a certain wolf. "My ass. We're here to kill you." When a certain wolf heard this, he roared in anger from embarrassment. However, Cheng Wu didn't believe what it said. In his eyes, this wolf was a mentally ill one. Thus, after the wolf finished speaking, Cheng Wu immediately took out a few small red balls and threw them at the wolf pack. In an instant, the small balls exploded in the wolf pack, instantly turning it into a sea of fire. Arg! Old ancestor! Help me! The flames quickly devoured countless wolves. When a certain wolf saw this, its lungs almost exploded. Fuck, this human actually cheated. It was really too detestable. The consequences of a certain wolf's anger were very serious. In its fury, it pounced on Cheng Wu, who then brandished his weapon and began fighting with a certain wolf. Instantly, the saber light and the sword shadow reflected each other. It had to be said that a certain wolf's strength had increased after it had advanced to Reverend God level. However, Cheng Wu had never really fought a certain wolf before, so he was not too sure about its strength. In addition, a certain wolf was currently in a state of rage, and was displaying 120% of its strength. Cheng Wu found it a little difficult to deal with it. A certain wolf's sharp claws were like short daggers, emitting a cold aura as they streaked across Cheng Wu's face like bolts of lightning. As the wolf pounced and hissed, Cheng Wu gradually felt the pressure. In the end, he could only defend himself and did not have the strength to retaliate. What was the strength of this wolf? Cheng Wu was extremely puzzled, but what he was even more puzzled about was, if this wolf had such strength, why did it come to seek death last time? Could it be that this wolf was really a wolf that was suffering? Ran out. From there? Cheng Wu's thoughts ran wild as he dealt with a certain wolf's attacks. Gradually, his physical strength and Shen power were starting to run out. However, he had brought a lot of pills with him. Thus, after feeling that he had used up too much of his energy, he quickly fed himself a few handfuls of pills. A certain wolf stared at him with wide eyes. Damn humans. He was actually eating something good in front of it. The taste of that medicinal pill was really too alluring. It also wanted to eat it. The wolves that had not been affected by the flames earlier were drooling as they stared at Cheng Wu with envious eyes. Upon seeing this, Cheng Wu smiled and asked, "Do you want to eat? Can I?" A certain wolf asked in a silly manner, and stopped what it was doing. It couldn't help but feel disgusted in its heart. How could this human be so kind? Of course you can. However, as the saying goes, those who eat are short-handed. You've eaten my food, and if you continue to fight with me, wouldn't I be at a disadvantage? Cheng Wu said with a smile. He knew that he couldn't beat a certain wolf, so he could only use his wits. This wolf didn't seem to have a high IQ, so it should be very easy to trick. Sure enough, after hearing this, the wolf hesitated. However, the attraction of the pill that Cheng Wu ate was too great for it. It was definitely an instinctive attraction, and it could not resist it at all. Therefore, after thinking for a long time, the wolf finally made up its mind. Give me the pill you just ate, and we won't fight anymore. Chapter 2095. Endless Battle 2. No problem, but I have a condition. Cheng Wu continued. What condition? A certain wolf asked with a blank face. From now on, as long as I'm here, you can't take the initiative to find trouble with me. Cheng Wu said with a serious expression. I agree. Yes. A certain wolf agreed without thinking about it this time. After all, this guy wasn't the only one here. If it didn't cause trouble for this guy, it could cause trouble for others. A certain wolf's thoughts were very beautiful. Upon hearing this, Cheng Wu generously threw a jade bottle to a certain wolf. The wolf took the jade bottle and impatiently opened the bottle cap. It wolfed down a few pills and smacked its lips in satisfaction. The gaze it used to look at Chengwu became much gentler. Just like that, Chengwu, a certain wolf, and its tribesmen became temporary neighbors. It could be said that Chengwu was very bold to place his residence in the territory of a certain wolf pack. However, he now had a grasp of the wolf pack's weakness, and knew that a certain wolf liked good food. Therefore, he specifically catered to its preferences. In a few days, the man and wolf became brothers. A certain wolf even told Chengwu that it would protect this place and ensure his safety. When Chengwu heard this, he was so touched that he almost burst into tears. Furthermore, Chengwu managed to get a lot of information from the wolf. However, the low-intelligence wolf did not notice this at all. In fact, because Chengwu was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye, he answered almost all of Chengwu's questions. Unless he did not know anything, he would tell Chengwu everything. In the God Protection Tower's control room, the monster who saw this scene was full of admiration for Chengwu's ability. That guy might not be as strong as that stupid wolf, but he was very slick. Look, a certain wolf had already been completely subdued by him. He had even become his sparring partner. He wondered how Tsang would feel after seeing this. Thinking up to this point, Evildoer turned to look at Azure. Tsang, your subordinates don't seem to be very reliable. The demon laughed. Humph, that's just my worst subordinate. The others haven't come out yet. Why are you in such a hurry? Azure said unhappily. In fact, it was also depressed in its heart. It hated the stupid wolf that embarrassed it even more. However, it would not show this kind of emotion, otherwise it would be a joke to this damn demon. Oh really? Then I'll wait and see. His devilish smile was filled with schadenfreude. However, it was also because of his provocation that Lung Ruoxue and the others were facing the greatest challenge of their lives. That was to fight. Furthermore, it was a battle that would never stop. As long as they let their guard down, they would be attacked by the enemy and be riddled with injuries. After Lung Ruoxue had exterminated the countless number of beasts that appeared in front of her, she was finally so tired that she sat on the ground. However, the moment she sat down, she felt a gust of cold wind. Following that, the sky darkened and she heard a buzzing sound. Immediately, a swarm of black poisonous bees flew over from afar. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes narrowed. She knew that a battle was about to begin. Damn it! After grumbling and eating a few pills that could quickly replenish her physical strength and divine power, Lung Ruoxue stood up. Her sword was already in her hand, and she was just waiting for the bees to come to her. In an instant, the bee colony arrived and surrounded Lung Ruoxue. Then, in the middle of the swarm of bees, there was a fiery red light. The fiery red light suddenly grew larger and turned into a sea of fire. The bees, who had not developed sentience and only knew how to fight, were instantly swallowed by the sea of fire. A few seconds later, the swarm of bees disappeared, and a swarm of snakes followed. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she was so angry that she wanted to curse. Damn it, is this even over? He doesn't even let me take a breath. Is he trying to tire me to death? Fortunately, she had brought enough pills with her, and she was an alchemist herself. Otherwise, she would have been at the end of her rope sooner or later. Thinking of this, she suddenly started to worry about her grandfather and the others. She knew that they had also been brought in by Azure, and they had a limited number of pills in their hands. How long could they last? Moreover, could they withstand such a high-intensity, never-ending battle? She didn't know if she would have the chance to meet her grandfather and the others here. As Lung Ruoxue was thinking about this, her hands did not stop moving. The same meteor sword shower swept towards the snakes, and the snakes died the moment they touched it. After exterminating the snakes, Lung Ruoxue quickly left the area. However, she had not gone far when she encountered countless small and cute rabbits. These rabbits were not even the size of an adult's palm. They were all snowy white and fluffy, and were extremely cute. Furthermore, they were currently staring at her with a pair of watery red eyes. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue's face was filled with black lines. Was Azure trying to play the emotional card? First, he got some disgusting poisonous insects and snakes to disgust her, and now he got some cute rabbits to confuse her? However, she would not be fooled. even if these rabbits were very cute. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue raised the sword in her hand and thousands of fiery red meteors flew towards the cute rabbits. Following that, painful wails could be heard from the rabbits. "Big sister, why did you kill us?" the struggling rabbit said with a sad face before dying. However, Lung Ruoxue was unmoved because she knew that these weren't real rabbits. Even if they were real little rabbits, she wouldn't show them any mercy. After all, this was Tsong's special training. After eliminating the rabbit, she continued to move forward. When Tsong, who was sitting in the control room, saw Lung Ruoxue kill another batch of Totoro, he pretended to be sad and said, "Wu, Nyo's really too cruel. How can you kill my clansmen? That's your clansman." Hearing this, the demon couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and ask, "Of course, I'm also a Totoro." Azure nodded, not feeling ashamed at all. However, even the demon felt embarrassed for him. This guy's lies were as real as the truth. He was too shameless. More importantly, he knew that if Schwer didn't kill the enemy who appeared in front of her, she might be the one who would be killed. This was because Azure was cold-blooded. Even if it was a special training, he didn't care about people dying. Hence, the training was extremely dangerous. But seeing Schwer fight one battle after another without stopping, his heart ached a little. However, Song would definitely not give him any chance to perform, nor would he let him have the chance to see Schwer. So he could only watch Schwer's every move from the outside and encourage her. From the looks of it, Schwer's condition was pretty good, but the others were in a terrible state. Uncle Long and the others had fought more battles than Schwer. Although they were also group battles, the beasts that Uncle Long and the others had encountered were definitely a level higher than the ones Schwer had encountered. The leader had the same strength as them, and most importantly, they didn't have Schwer's abnormal flames. Therefore, every battle was a tough one for them. Chapter 2096, Endless Battle 3 Battle. 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 For Uncle Long and the others, their daily task was to fight. There were countless beasts that came to their door. They had to fight at least 3 times a day and guard against poisonous insects at night. Just like that, a month passed. Uncle Long and the others fought until they were about to throw up. Their divine power and physical strength were quickly used up, and their pills were rapidly running out. This fact forced them to save up on pills. Unfortunately, a night's rest was not enough to replenish their energy. Thus, in a short month, they were haggard and in a sorry state. Even so, the beasts would not let them go. Therefore, they had to be on high alert every day and find opportunities to cultivate to maintain their best condition. This kind of high-intensity battle also put a lot of pressure on their hearts, but they knew that it was useless to blame the heavens and blame others. Song would not be soft-hearted, so everything still depended on themselves. After an unknown period of time, Lung Ruoxue and the rest had gradually gotten used to such intense battles. Furthermore, they were shocked to discover that after each battle, the rate at which they absorbed spiritual energy would increase. Although this was like a drop in the bucket to their rate of consumption, the spiritual energy in their bodies would not allow them to maintain their peak condition. However, to them it was better than nothing. However, this discovery did not last long. Lung Ruoxue and the rest realized that the number of attacks they encountered had increased every day. Needless to say, this was definitely Tsong's doing. Although this fact made them very depressed, they had no choice but to put in 120,000% of their energy to deal with the battle. And with the sudden increase in the number of attacks, their speed of absorbing spiritual energy was not enough. Audiobook, who had just gone through a fierce battle, was lying on a huge green rock, panting heavily. He had just encountered a group of pythons. The smallest of them was nearly 10 meters in diameter, and the weakest was a divine king. He had almost vomited blood from killing them. Fortunately, there were only a dozen pythons. Otherwise, he would have died of exhaustion. When would days like this end? During this period of time, the number of opponents he had encountered was more than the number he had encountered in his entire life. Moreover, the opponents he had encountered were all fierce, brutal, and would not rest until one of them was dead. They often took turns to fight, causing him to have a hard time. Every time he fought with his opponents, it was also extremely dangerous. He believed that if he could not kill those opponents, he would be the one to die in the end. Although he didn't know if he would really die, he didn't dare to take any risks. Furthermore, with his understanding of Song, he knew that Song would not be so kind as to scare them. Song did not care about their lives either. Thus he had to work hard to survive. The idea of completing the special training had now become his only spiritual pillar. As Aogia thought about this, he tried his best to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. Suddenly, he felt an unusual aura in the air, and he quickly jumped up vigilantly. Standing on the huge green rock, Aogia observed the surroundings. That's strange. She had clearly felt danger just now, but why couldn't she find it now? Just as Aogia was puzzled, the ground shook. Then he staggered and fell from the green rock. After he stood up, he realized that the green rock was alive. Fuck. Even stones were unreliable these days. Aogia's eyes widened as he looked at the stone that was moving slightly. He was thinking, what is this thing? It was only when a head popped out from under the rock that Aogia confirmed that it was a giant turtle. Although the giant tortoise was 2 meters tall and only 10 meters in diameter, Aogia believed that this was not the giant tortoise's maximum state. As soon as he thought of this, he saw the giant tortoise suddenly grow to more than 10 meters in height and 100 meters in diameter. It was like a mountain and looked down at Aogia. Aogia was not to be outdone either. He transformed into his true form and flew into the air, staring at the giant turtle. The eagle and the turtle stared at each other for a long time. And finally, the giant turtle opened its mouth. Little guy, you've been lying on my body for so long and you haven't paid. The giant turtle asked Aogia for money. Even if Aogia was calm, he could not accept it. Black lines were hanging on his forehead as he suppressed his anger and said, "Who are you calling a little fellow? You've lived longer than me?" He just didn't mention money. Haven't you heard of the 1,000-year turtle? I've grown so big, I've definitely lived longer than you. The giant turtle said matter-of-factly as it stared at Aogia with its huge eyes. Aogia was a little scared. That might not be the case. Aogia said coldly, "It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, just pay the fee for lying on my body." The giant turtle smiled as if it was afraid that Aogia would not give it money. When Aogia heard this, he was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. What the hell was this place? Why are there all kinds of oddball beasts? However, Aogia did not want to be robbed by a turtle, so he said directly, "I don't have any money, but I'm dead." Yo, you want to play dirty? I'm not afraid of being played by others. If you don't pay me the money I want, then don't even think about leaving this place. Stay here with me. I'm very lonely, and I really need someone to chat with me. The huge turtle slowly said, "I also won't stay here to accompany you." Aogia said angrily, "Oh really? Little guy, it seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin." I didn't want to use force, but you forced me to." The giant turtle sighed and looked at Aogia helplessly. The expression on its face was very conflicted, as if it was forced to do so. When Aogia heard the giant tortoise's words, he knew that a fight was about to begin. However, after so many rounds, he did not mind fighting a few more. Hence, as soon as the giant tortoise finished speaking, Aogia immediately launched his attack. Several wind blades that exuded a violent aura flew straight at the giant turtle's head. When the giant turtle saw that it was in danger, it hurriedly retracted its head and hid in its shell. The wind blades all hit the giant turtle's thick shell, but not even a scratch was left. Upon seeing this, Aogia's anger grew. However, he knew very well that the defense of turtles was extremely strong, and this giant turtle's strength was not inferior to his. Thus, it would not be possible to defeat this giant turtle in a short time. With anger, Aogia fired a few more wind blades, all of which hit the turtle shell. The giant turtle did not even reveal its head. In his anger, Aogia gave up on his attack and planned to leave. He could not waste his time on a turtle. The giant tortoise, who saw through Aogia's thoughts, stretched out its head slowly and reminded him with a smile. "Little guy, you haven't paid. You can't leave yet." When Aojia heard this, he was furious. Then he said to the giant turtle, "You cowardly turtle! What kind of skill is hiding in the shell? Do you dare to fight me with real weapons? Don't hide." The giant turtle was not angry when it heard what Aojia said. It was still smiling and said, "I didn't dodge. I'm on the defense. Defend your head." Aojia was furious. He was too lazy to argue with the turtle. He turned around and left. This time, the giant turtle did not stop him. However, after taking a few steps, he suddenly realized that he could not leave this place. There was a colorless film in front of him that blocked his way. Aojia tried to attack, but realized that the thin membrane did not move at all. "You did it." Aojia turned around and looked at the giant tortoise. He said with certainty, "Hee, I told you you can't leave without paying." The giant tortoise laughed smugly while Aojia was furious. Just like that, the eagle and the turtle were in a stalemate. The giant turtle did not fight with Aojia. If Aojia attacked, it would hide its head in its shell. When it stopped fighting, it would stick its head out and chat with Aojia happily. Of course, most of the time, it was the giant turtle talking to itself, but Aojia did not want to bother with it at all. "Little guy, it's good that you're here with me. Those beasts won't have the chance to find trouble with you again. It's safe and not tiring. Right?" The giant tortoise repeated the same words for more than 100 times, and Aojia's ears were getting calluses from hearing it. In the end, Aojia could not take it anymore and replied angrily, "Good my ass." Trapped by these defensive giant turtles, Aojia was so depressed that he was about to hit a wall. At this moment, he would rather stay outside and fight with the beasts that came to find trouble than stay with this talkative turtle. If this continued, he would go crazy. Ah. The villain in Aojia's heart was going crazy. When would this annoying giant turtle let him go? At the thought of this, Aojia asked tentatively, "Will you let me go if I pay you?" It was originally. The huge turtle opened its eyes slightly and said in a faint voice, "It was supposed to be." Aojia was so angry that he stopped breathing and almost fainted. The giant turtle saw how excited Aojia was and explained, "If you had paid me in the beginning, I might have let you go. But after we've been together for so long, I can't bear to let you leave. It's very dangerous outside. If you stay here and have nothing to do, you can chat with me. We can keep each other company. Isn't life like this beautiful?" That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.